Good evening. Tonight, as chair of ASSAP, I am delighted to be able to bring to you an almost unique fellow in the annals of psychical research. Kith Linder's case attracted a great deal of controversy, and in some ways, I think that's because of the way of some of the names associated with it, that how it was brought to attention in the UK. I think that's unfair, and those of you who read my review of his first book in the Journal of the Society for Psychical Research will know that I regard it as one of the most fascinating and interesting cases of the current era. The reason I say Keith is almost unique is that he's highly intelligent, but many poltergeist experiences are. But unlike many other poltergeist experiences, he has set about learning about parapsychology in great detail, and and has set about attempting to uncover the truth behind the phenomena itself. So there are many experts on poltergeists, Christopher Lawson, for example, who's with us tonight, and many others, from Bob Roll through to Alan Gould, and Howard Wilkinson, Tony Cornell, even Sasha Ravel Sitwell. But I have done my share of poltergeist research as well, but I've never actually lived with a poltergeist. And that is what makes, that to my mind, is what makes Keith unique. He's like a doctor who caught a rare disease and is recording the symptoms. Maybe that's a wrong term. But nonetheless, I'm intrigued and interested, and obviously we all have questions and we'll all be skeptical about some parts, but let's just let Keith tell us the truth as he experienced it and see what he could tell us about the nature of the poltergeist phenomena. So without further ado, I give you Keith. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's good morning from Seattle. I believe I might be the only one here from the U.S. So thanks for having me. I'm gonna share my screen and try my best to load a PowerPoint. I know with Zoom and technology and poltergeists, there's a lot of technical difficulties that might arise, but we're going to give it a shot anyway. I do this for a living at work as far as my occupation. I'm an IT project manager. With COVID, like you, I've become more familiar with the video conferencing tools as I've been working from home, probably about a year and a half due to COVID. But like all things, we're subject to Murphy's Law. So do not be surprised if there's a little bit of glitch or technical difficulties, especially as I've learned over time over certain subject matter. I've done countless interviews and Q&As, and I can tell you certain subject matter seems to bring out the technical, electronical difficulties, if you will, but we'll power through it. And so just please be patient as I'm going to turn off my mic to decrease the bandwidth, and then I'm going to do a screen share to show what I want to talk about. So my face is going to disappear. You'll see my avatar, but you should still hear me talking. And I'm going to see here, screen share, and then ask for somebody in the audience to confirm once they can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it fine at the moment.
Okay. Wait for it.
Just need to go slideshow start from beginning.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it to. Okay, here we go. Can everybody see that?
I can.
Okay, cool. Should have widened up. It's filled up my entire screen, so you guys have all miniature to my right side. So let's here we go. So yeah, so can we explain the poltergeist? That's been a question of many, myself included, based on the fact that 2012, me and my ex-girlfriend encountered one. Of course, when we encountered the phenomena, me and my girlfriend at the time knew nothing of poltergeists. We knew nothing of the paranormal. That's very important for those who are just being introduced to this case. The story I'm going to begin with is going to sort of sound cliche. There might be some similarities between either your experience or the experience that you had or know of others who've encountered poltergeists. But also, when I asked the question, can we explain the poltergeist? I believe, based on my experience in the data and stories, more importantly, the stories of others, and the evidence captured from my case, all combined, I believe, yes, we can explain the poltergeist. But however, explaining the poltergeist in modern day terms does create more questions than answers. So obviously, the title of today's Zoom session is probably one of my favorite books on the subject of poltergeists, meaning based on the fact that the information inside this book that I've read, probably one of the first books I read in trying to uncover or understand, I should say, our experience, was the book written by A.R.G. Owen in 1964 of Can We Explain the Poltergeist? It's what I feel and believe is required reading for multiple reasons. For me, a lot of the, I guess, other poltergeist experiencers or survivors, stories, their experience mimic that are almost identical to what me and Tina experienced. And to me, my opinion, that is where the research should be going. The research overall should be going toward the similarities amongst the cases being reported throughout millennia, because that's where I believe the evidence is. So let's go ahead and start how this began or what my journey was. This is the Bothell House. Some of you might have seen a picture and maybe never knew what the Bothell House looked like. This is a single dwelling unit. Bothell, Washington is located 20 minutes northeast of Seattle, Washington. It is a suburb of a major metropolitan city. This is the house that me and Tina lived in, me especially, for 4 years, beginning May 2012, and I moved out of May 2016. What's interesting about the Bothell House in the very, very beginning, as it relates to, why us, why Keith and Tina? And one of the often questions I was asked as it relates to my experience and some of the things I've uncovered through my research is there's this common perception that poltergeist phenomena, or the root of it, I should say, is due to trouble in the home, meaning that there is somebody in the home that's mentally unstable, disruptive. There could be financial difficulty. There could be health difficulty, of course, mental difficulties. Go further back, some of the root causes theorized was you have an adolescent teenager, primarily female, going through puberty, some sort of lifestyle change, mainly negative. Long story short, our case, our experience contradicts all of that. It goes against or goes in the opposite direction. In 2002, after successfully obtaining a management position in a prestigious healthcare company, my girlfriend and I did decide it was time to move in together. I had received a new job. It's received an astronomical amount, increase in pay, increase in job title. So we felt the time to move in together. I can honestly tell you there was nothing upsetting, disgruntled, stressful, mental breakdown, or anything about this move into the house. It was the opposite. Tina and I had been together already 2 years. We were living in different places, so the decision to move under one roof was 50-50, equally agreed upon. And we chose the Bothell House that you just saw together. There was nothing stressful about our move, and there was nothing stressful about us living together until the activity started to happen. What we encountered within minutes of moving in together would automatically change our lives forever, and that's putting it lightly. Now, when I say what we encountered within minutes of living together, one of the questions I'm often asked from researchers is, when did the activity happen? And what, if any, were there any changes that, might have sparked the activity to begin in the first place? And I know where they're going with this now, of going back to what I said earlier. They're looking for the stressful environment. They're looking for the vexation between couples, between family, between children and their spouse and their parents, between vexation between the parents and their children. They're looking for anything to sort of see what sticks, if you will, as to what could be causing the activity. Because truth be told, the activity does come abruptly. It does come abruptly and grow. It grows, and using the analogy of a snowball effect. But we had none of that. So once again, I had just received a job promotion, an increase in pay or increase in salary. And there was no trouble with me and Tina relationship for the fact that we had already been together 2 years. And we viewed moving it together as a next step. And then on the same day, not the day we moved in, the day we went to sign the papers, we were maybe in the house less than an hour, we experienced what I now know today was a disembodied voice. Okay? And how that story goes is the homeowner, the landlord, had just left. We had just signed the leasing papers. And now we're sitting on the floor just talking nonchalantly about this new house we're about to move into. And out of nowhere, literally, was this loud kid cough. Now, it was very distinct and very loud. And this is interesting because as soon as we heard it, I looked at Tina looked at me, and we said at the same time, was that a kid cough? It was very distinct. We have no kids, FYI, full disclosure. We have no children. Children have never lived in the Bothell house with us. And the noise of the cough sounded like it came from one of the rooms upstairs. However, us being in a new home, us being in a good mood, obviously we didn't think we were dealing with a poltergeist then. We shrugged and said that whatever it was had to have come from outside, even though I made a mental note in my head, maybe subconscious, that all the windows in the house are closed. We haven't even moved in yet. There's no appliances, there's no furniture, the electricity, the water, all that is turned off. A house this size, this is a 24, maybe 2,500 square foot house. As you can see, it's a 2-story dwelling unit, single unit. And the noise sound like it rang from upstairs. But there's nothing to go, as people who have no familiarity with the paranormal, obviously we ignored that. But it did stay in the back of my mind, especially with the other activity soon to happen. Some of the phenomena we witnessed and lived through, and none of this that you're reading should be new. This is typically the Poltergeist manifesto of objects thrown, electronic equipment malfunction, missing items. I can tell you missing items began on day one. The first item to officially be declared missing in our home was my car keys. These were the car keys I never used. These were my extra set. You have your primary and your secondary. My secondary I've never used, and it went missing. It was in a glove box, and it went missing. items appearing that we didn't own. Once again, going back to, we didn't have kids. However, we're finding kid toys that would look to be put in our direct path or displayed openly. You wake up in the morning, you're getting ready to go to work, you're grabbing some coffee, and there are kid toys, toy trucks, toy cars, girls' jewelry, not women jewelry, girl jewelry, displayed in the middle of the floor, in the middle of the kitchen table, the kitchen countertop. This began happening days and weeks of moving into the Bothell home. Other phenomena we experienced: water puddles, strange appearance of water puddles, no rhyme or reason as to where it came from or how it got there. Obviously, phantom footsteps. Now imagine this: you come home, you open your door, you've been gone for 8 hours because you've been at work all day, and you open your front door, and as you're walking in, this is you walking into your own home, there's a scutter or scurry of pitter-patter footsteps darting upstairs, okay? Darting upstairs, like, I'm not talking about one or two, I'm talking a multitude. And they dart upstairs, dart through the upstairs hallway, and you hear this scurrying about upstairs coming from either the master bedroom, guest bedroom, or my office. And this happened constantly. Other reports of, like I said, shadowy figures, loud bangs, humming noise, spontaneous fires. Of course, some of the things this case is known for were the Bibles that caught fire, but also, more importantly, there were other objects in the house that caught fire. 2 computer monitors spontaneously caught fire. 3 Bibles caught fire. My clothing, while wearing it, caught fire. Other phenomena, wall writings, of course, you've seen some of those. I'm going to talk about a lot of that today. Wall writings both inside and outside the house. This is going to be important when we try to determine root cause of poltergeist phenomena of we did, of having inexplicable wall writing, scribble, symbols, words, appearing in areas outside the house, as well as in same liquid substance, personal attacks. There have been moments where I have been traveling on business. My job requires me to travel, where I have been attacked in my hotel room while sleeping, while at the same time, key word here, the same time, Tina is being attacked in the Bothell house. Okay, I've done a lot of poltergeist research, and I will continue doing a lot of poltergeist research because once again, I want to call attention to the similarities amongst every case. And there's a lot of them, but the nuances are equally important in the sense of, I have yet to find, and if anybody here knows of one, let me know. I have yet to find a poltergeist incident where the house occupant, meaning those who lived in the house, not just the one, the primary, but several people in the home were all attacked once they were exiting the home, meaning at work, meaning at a social gathering, meaning at a concert, on a plane, in a hotel room, in a restaurant. I have yet to find those cases. The Bothell house or the Bothell case is that case. That should mean something to somebody, because I've been 5,000 miles away from the Bothell home, and I've had objects thrown at me. I've had objects shredded. I've had electrical issues that the IT department of the hotel are at their wits' end on figuring out. I've seen shadowy figures. I've had my sheets yanked off my bed, my pillow yanked from under my head, and I'm 5,000 miles away from the Bothell house. At the same time, though, we're going maybe 2 to 3 time zones backward, right? Tina is being attacked also. We're calling each other at the same time, okay? She's experiencing attacks. I'm experiencing attacks. Once again, I've not yet found a case where that's ever happened before. I'm not saying it hasn't. I would love to read about it because I want to call attention to the similarities. Number 13, apparitional sightings. Yes, several apparitional sightings in the Bothell home. We call them ghosts, but I'll later learn these are apparitions. And of course, there's a distinction. Also, insect appearances. What does not get talked about the Bothell house was the countless times we had insects. By insects, I mean flies. I mean flies the size of, in the US, nickel, silver dollar. These are huge flies that would appear in inexplicable places, and they would always be one at a time, and you could not shoo them away. You cannot scare them away. I don't know how flies are in Europe, but flies are here. They're very, you wave your hand, they fly off, right? But these flies were very stubborn, to use that word, okay? And they appeared inexplicably, and I did find other cases that were reported of insects, the strange appearance of insects. And there was other events also that we'll talk about. So what I'm doing right now is I'm laying down the foundation of, what are some of the root causes of poltergeist phenomena, what these entities, and I use the word entities, or what this phenomena is, but I want people to get a foundation and an understanding of what we experience and live through, and then sort of dissect some of these things. And definitely I'm going to be talking about a lot of the things that we experience inside the Bothell home that have not really caught the attention of the paranormal community as a whole. I can tell you through my study, the level of activity we experience while living in the Bothell home can pretty much be broken down to 3 unique categories. And this should not be anything new to those familiar with poltergeist phenomena. The 3 unique characters that I broke it down to is trickery, communication, and tormenting. And that is not really in any particular order, except to say you can have all 3 at the same time. But however, usually, and with us, usually, the thing that starts first was the trickery. Now, what's an example in our home of trickery? Trickery in our home is I'm sitting in my office watching TV. I'm upstairs. Tina is downstairs cooking. And I hear somebody say, "Keith, come here." In Tina's voice, Mike, in Tina's voice. "Keith, come here." I'll give you an example of trickery. I automatically get up and respond. I hear somebody call my name. It's Tina's voice. I'm going to go respond. I walk to Tina. "Yes, what do you want?" "Yes." She looks at me with a look of puzzlement, like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "You called me." "I didn't call you." "Yes, you did. I heard your name clear as day. You called me. What do you want?" "I didn't call your name." That's an example of trickery. It's not the only example, but I'm just using that as one of the events that we experience as a means of early on events happening in the Bothell home. Other forms of trickery, like I said, include the missing items, the leaving a room with the lights on, coming back and the lights are off, okay? You swear up and down yourself that you left the light on. Therefore, why should it be off? Okay, you turn the lights back on naturally, and maybe 30 minutes to an hour later, you go back out the room, get a glass of water, or you eat supper, and then you come back upstairs, and the light is off. Okay, the first few times that happening, you ignore it, you scratch your head, it's weird, okay, but finally there is a form of, or there will become a moment where the trickery is now going to upgrade or escalate into the other 2 categories I just talked about, which is the communication and the majority of poltergeist cases that I've studied, that I've read in the Bothell house, there will become, me and Tina don't know this yet, there is going to become a moment where the poltergeist is going to initiate contact, okay? Initiate contact. And I'll give you the examples very quickly. So the poltergeist phenomena, ours included, I try to let this picture speak more than what I'm attempting to say, in the sense of what's the paranormal community as a whole seems to focus on, and then yet ignore and not pay attention to, are the other phenomena that you see I have listed here that's under the water. Meaning you have an iceberg, and the object or the things we tend to focus on are the objects that move, right? The community as a whole seems to call attention to, and that's understandable, rightfully so. However, I feel these other elements of poltergeist phenomena are equally, or should be equally, called out and focused on, and some more than others, because, I mean, some are more important than others, because they reveal a interesting pattern or similarity, which I'm going to show later in the slide. But everything you see here, we experience, and I know majority of other poltergeist cases have experienced, but that don't get talked about. Now, of course, going from top to bottom, as you can see, the ones closest to the surface do get talked about, but the ones as you go deeper down the iceberg, they really don't. It seems like some, I believe, in my opinion, are being purposely ignored. Example, shadowy figures. I believe that's being purposely ignored. I have not seen a lot of individuals call attention to why you have several cases going back millennia where the individuals who experience this phenomena talk about the shadowy figures. We experience that constantly, me especially. I experience that, the foul smell. Everybody I've talked to and read talks about the feeling of being watched. That just seems like a staple amongst malevolent hauntings, or hauntings period. That sensation of I'm being watched. I never knew what that meant watching movies and whatnot, but I knew what it meant when we lived in a Bothell House, and it's real. There is a sensation of being watched. Coming into your own home, your own secure environment, and it's like they're watching every move. Sleep, shower, brush your teeth, dinner, water, cooking, they're watching you. Other phenomena that I feel are not often discussed, reported, but not often discussed or studied, are the spontaneous fires. You know, one of the things me and Tina got criticized for, which is weird, was we're reporting to the paranormal community the Bible's burned. We're saying objects are catching fire in our home, and one of the first things we're being asked to do is film it. Like, a paranormal researcher is asking us to set up equipment to capture the fires. Now, I don't know, I mean, you like me understand the word spontaneous means just that. It's spontaneous. We can't predict when a fire will erupt. We can't predict which object is going to catch fire. I mean, those who study poltergeist know you can put a camera on one object or one room or one area of the house, right? And lo and behold, the activity starts in another area of the house. Going back to that trickery, okay? So we were tasked, and we never understood why, of trying to capture the phenomena in real time. One of those phenomena we were asked to capture was the spontaneous fires, which I thought, and Tina thought, was just an impossible task to give us, the house occupants, but nevertheless, we were asked to do it. Okay. I want to talk about two examples of events that we experienced in the Bothell House that dealt with trickery. One was early on, meaning a few weeks of living in the Bothell House, was the levitating plant. If you read my first book, The Bothell Hell House, you know, once me and Tina both saw with our own eyes, because we were sitting on the couch side by side, shoulder to shoulder, watching TV, We saw, as you can see in this diagram, this is the diagram, the plant was stood about 4 foot tall next to the TV, levitate. And by levitate, I don't mean slowly or gradually. It was a it darted up. It darted up, done a 360-degree spin, turn, and fell to the ground in front of us, okay? And we both saw that. We both saw it. Okay, this is the evening. Like I said, we were maybe a few, less than 2 months into the home. We had already experienced the missing objects, the kid toys, the phantom footsteps. We had already experienced all that. The kid cough, my car keys are missing. But those things we could disavow. Those things we could shrug off. We, at this point in time, and this is very important, at this point in time, once we saw this, the activity or the other activities I'm going to talk about became a daily occurrence. Because once we saw this, we knew our house was haunted. We knew. We didn't think malevolent. We didn't think ghost or evil or demon or whatever. We just thought, oh, kid goes, oh, interesting. Let's see, just use the internet to see how do you deal with something like this? How do you deal with something like this? And the advice given from the internet was talk to the spirit, be nice, be kind, ask it or them or they to leave. Are they lost? Suggest that they go into the light. This is what we were advised on the websites that we found on the internet. Fast forward, obviously that didn't work because what you see on the right side happened in 2014. So imagine, this is the same plant, matter of fact, same plant relocated. The plant that was sitting by the TV was being moved and thrown so many times that Tina finally got frustrated and said she's going to put the plant in the middle of the staircase. It's going to have a new home. It's going to occupy this corner of the staircase because it had been thrown and moved so many times. We thought if we move it, maybe they'll leave it alone. Obviously, that didn't work. Now, if you see the picture to the right, you'll see that the plant is sitting in the corner on the mid-level of the staircase. You're probably asking yourself, well, what's that plant doing in the doorway? That doorway is the master bedroom, okay? And you can see the staircase behind it. That's the staircase. You see the rail, follow it down. That's where the plant was. Now, I want you to imagine this, everybody looking at this picture to the right. You're going to, this is the morning, you're going to go take a shower, okay? It's just you in the home. Your girlfriend, your husband, your boyfriend, girlfriend, they're not even in the home, it's just you. You go take a shower, okay? When you come out of your shower, you go to your bed or whatever, and there's this plant standing in the doorway, all right? Standing in the doorway, okay? Now, this plant has always been in the corner where it should be, right? Now, what's going to be more weird is you carry the plant back down to the doorway. By now, we've had objects thrown, Bible fires, and all this, so we know we got something weird and not good. So when I say this, my reaction is, so I'm letting you understand that we've already seen things that just blow our minds, okay? But you never get used to it. So I come out of my shower and I see the plant now in my doorway. My first reaction is to carry it back down to where it came from. And while I'm doing that, I'm telling the spirits, cut it out. Leave us alone, leave the house, okay? Now, I've just walked this plant back down to its original position. As I'm walking back upstairs and get back to the doorway to resume my day, I hear a huge thud, okay? Huge thud. I turn around and the plant is right back where I moved it from, and right there you see standing in the doorway. This happened less than 5 seconds. Okay, I've just carried the plant down. I'm walking back up the stairs. I get to the doorway. I'm not even halfway in. I hear a thud, something behind me. I turn around. It's the plant. All right? It's the plant. Once again, trickery. This next example of trickery is really what I talked about earlier of when we were attacked in different places. And by attack, I also mean the trickery followed me from city to city. Now, I want you to look at the plants because these plants look similar to the ones in my home. Not identical, but similar, okay? Definitely taller, but not much. This is, I had flown to San Jose, California, December 2005, to my company's office. We have an office in San Jose. I had bought a car. I had bought a car from a coworker, all right? And I needed to fly to California to, number one, sign the papers, pay him the money, and drive my car back from San Jose, California to Seattle, Washington. About a day and a half, 2-day drive. All right. So I go into my office, and as I get into the office, what you can see, I want you to look at the left picture, the first plant on the right next to the corner of the wall. What you can't see over there is a copy room. There's a copy machine, there's printer paper, there's printer, there's cabinets, there's office supplies. Me and my coworker are in this room signing over the paper to me. We're doing the bill of sale, we're doing the title license, I'm giving him the money or the check for the car. We're talking car, all right? And then I leave. Now, when we walk into that office, there were 3 plants on the wall, as you can see in the picture to the right. Now, I didn't think of it at the time, and why would I? Because I'm trying to buy this car. I flew one way to San Jose, knowing that I'm going to drive the car back to Seattle. So I flew one way. As I'm leaving, I'm trying to get my car and get back on the road before the San Jose nightmare traffic erupts. As I'm probably within the city limits of San Jose, my coworker sends me an email. And my coworkers know of the Bothell House because this is 2015 and the case had been made public and went international. So my coworkers were familiar with the goings on at the Bothell House. And the coworker that emailed me is not the coworker who sold me the car. This is a totally different coworker. He emails me and says, "Chief, did you see the email that just went out?" And I'm like, "No, what are you talking about?" He says, "The human resources in that building has sent a company-wide email out saying or asking that whoever took the plant by the wall near the copy room, can you please return it? Can you please return?" That email went out at 4:38 Pacific time. That's the timestamp of the email that went out to the company employees. There's about 200 employees that work in that office. And my coworker sits directly, maybe several rows down from this office. As you can see the timestamp, same day, 5 p.m., a second company-wide email goes out. And it says, "The plant has mysteriously returned. Thank you for whoever took it." Okay? And my coworker says, "Keith, nobody took that plant." All right? This plant is about 5 feet tall. All right? You don't take plants, and put them by your desk and declare them yours. That's just not something any employee would do in an office. Okay? Now, when he told me that whole incident, I knew immediately what had went down. Once again, I'm used to that. I'm used to it by now. I'm used to having items disappear or reappear in front of me while traveling abroad. He thought it very interesting that the plant went missing for maybe a consecutive of 20 minutes at best, but then mysteriously reappeared and nobody knew how it reappeared. I mean, somebody's going to carry a 5-foot plant away, let alone bring it back. You're going to notice somebody, you're going to pass people, right? You're going to pass people in the hallway. You're going to pass people in the cubicle. You see the office on the picture to the right, you see the glass wall, that's an office. You're going to pass people who are meeting in that office at the time. There's no way you're going to walk through an office environment in the middle of the day if you, meaning an employee, took a plant that you, for whatever reason, made yours, which is not. It's a decorative plant, okay? So once again, trickery and targeting. What I mean by targeting, with poltergeist phenomena that I've noticed from my experience, yes, there's trickery, yes, there's communication, yes, there's torment. The targeting of poltergeist phenomena that I classify as targeting is when the poltergeist homes in on one individual more than others, okay? Me and Tina, and I'm gonna show you examples, have instances of us both being targeted, okay? Where the poltergeist has gone after Tina, where the poltergeist has gone after me. That's called what I call targeting. An example of targeting / trickery is the clothing that I would find my clothing. I just ironed my clothing. I lay my clothing out on the bed. I go take a shower. I come back. My clothing is nailed to the wall, as you can see to the picture on the top left. That's my shirt. The doorway next to it is the restroom, the bathroom I just came out of after taking a shower. This picture was taken early morning in 2014. I had just ironed that shirt and went to take a shower and came back. Now, what's interesting is there are 3 nails in this shirt. I did not hear the nailing of the shirt into the wall. When I reduplicated that, and I did because I wanted to capture the sound, I heard it. This shirt is only a few feet from where I was taking a shower, okay? The pants, blue jeans, that's outside the bedroom door. That's the same door I showed you the plant. Those are my blue jeans hanging nailed above the bedroom door, all right? Once again, trickery. The bottom pictures are similar reports of individuals in homes, residential homes, waking up or coming home, finding all their kitchen cabinet doors open. This phenomenon of the kitchen cabinet doors takes place in every continent. I've found instances of, in pictures, the pictures look identical. You can, some of you who have Poltergeist books or read Poltergeist books have seen this picture before. You've seen the kitchen cabinet doors open for no rhyme or reason, right? Same phenomenon, once again, can be trickery in one instance and torment in another. How the trickery translates to torment is it happens over and over. Me and Tina can close these kitchen cabinet doors the first time we experienced this and come down the stairs a few minutes later or a day later, and they're back the way they were. Now you're getting into the torment. When it becomes repetitive, like my clothes hanging on my wall, that eventually becomes torment, because believe it or not, these are clothes that I was planning on wearing that day, okay? And now they're hanging nailed to a wall, all right? Communication, like I mentioned earlier, there is a point in the time or the phenomena where the poltergeist is going to make contact. Majority of poltergeist cases experience this. And it comes in many forms. And me and Tina, myself mainly, have experienced all of them. We know the wall writings, okay? We know of the notes written on paper left inexplicable and weird places in the home for house occupants to find. The messages are always cryptic. It always seem to be an adolescent, a childlike component to whoever wrote it. Some of them are written with the house occupants' names. Sometimes the names of the house occupants are misspelled or turned around or upside down. Some can be riddles. Some seem like riddles. Some seem like breadcrumbs in the sense of the poltergeist is trying to tell you something, but they're very cryptic. But the communication component that I've read and studied in other poltergeist cases seems to come mid-phase, meaning there's the introduction, there's the trickery, there's a little bit of tormenting going on, and then there's a little bit of communication. Like I said, written wall writing, computer, text messaging, email, phantom emails, notes left on doors, left in books. The list is endless. And of course, this one is one that says die KL. That's what that says, but you'll see that's going to get worse. Communication, the ability to send or receive information. That's exactly what the poltergeist in our house was doing. It's just a basic fundamental of the word communication. You don't really have to science the term up. Communication is communication. The ability to send or receive information. Poltergeists, in my opinion, are experts at sending information, okay, and receiving naturally. What you see on the left is my bar stool. My bar stool, the one I sat in primarily, was the one that was thrown the most. My bar stool, the one I sat in all the time, was the one that was relocated to other portions of the house. The second picture going from left to right is the chair that I sit in. That's the kitchen table downstairs. This is the chair that I sit in. That chair, no other chair, was pulled out like this one, except this one. This is the only chair. There's 6 chairs at the table. Only the one I sit in, as you can see, is the head chair, pulled out in square, and it's put in the middle of the kitchen in this weird formation. I don't know what this formation means, except to say, when you move over to the third picture, going from the left, I'm going from left to right here, you see now that same chair. This is a different day. This is a different night, okay? This is months later. That same chair is now pulled out. It's sort of facing the same direction. But now you look back, you see the other chairs are sort of pulled out and some sort of, I don't know, it's a weird assembly going on here. But what you can barely see, and that's because of the camera, is there's a cross on the floor. That cross, a few feet from the chair, that black cross on the floor, was upstairs hanging in the bedroom. Okay, it was hanging in the bedroom. Now, the picture to the right, to the far right, now we're in my office. That's the same chair that you see in the other picture. That's my chair. That's the one I sit in. Okay, that chair is now in my office, and if you see, it's facing weird. There's a camera. I don't know if you can see it in the Zoom, but there's a camera facing the doorway. That camera caught me coming in because it's a motion detection camera. So it nabbed me coming in. I'm coming into my room. I took this picture with my cell phone. This chair, which you can't really see, and I hate that, but there's a camera facing the chair in front of the TV. This chair there's 2 cameras in this room, motion cameras. This chair, mind you, is in my office now. What's interesting about this chair, everyone, is we were not at home when this incident happened, or when all these for that matter, but I have an alarm system. I have an alarm system upstairs and downstairs. And when we leave our home, we arm the house. The alarm system is kicked on, okay? It's made to detect an intruder coming from outside the house into the house. It's gonna detect the motion sensor, whatever. There is no way, and this is why we're going. The alarm, when we got home, the alarm system was on, and it was not turned off. I get a notification if my alarm system goes off. I get a notification if it turns off. Okay, I get a notification. This night, we came home. This chair is in my office. The alarm system is still on. You cannot move that chair from the kitchen to my office without tripping an alarm. There's no way. This stair has to go up the staircase for us, meaning you and I. You know, poltergeist, we don't know. But for us, you and I, to move that chair from the kitchen, where you see it originally is, to the office, you would trip so many security alarms. You wouldn't even make it out the kitchen in my house with my security system, let alone downstairs, let alone the staircase, let alone the hallway before you get to my house. It is so laced with security alarms that you and I could not carry that chair. We would never make it out the kitchen. And we come home, the house is in total disarray. I mean, destruction. You can't really see it, but total destruction. You can see the office in shambles, and you can see the upside down cross written on the carpet. That's an upside down cross next to the chair in my office. And the alarm system is on, hasn't been turned off. And you're scratching your head as to how are they able to do that? Once again, this right here will both fall in trickery, torment, and communication, because the upside down cross on the carpet is a means of communication, as is the chair. Once again, the communication does not necessarily have to be automatically understood. You know, if you talk to me in a foreign language, you are communicating with me. I might not understand Mandarin and not be able to interpret what you mean because I don't understand Mandarin. You know, I don't understand Chinese. I don't understand Arabic. But if you're talking Arabic to me, you are effectively communicating with me. I don't necessarily have to understand what you're saying. Like I said, we don't necessarily have to understand what these chairs and how they're assembled mean, but this is definitely a communication going on. This is a communication in conjunction with both trickery and torment. Now, why torment? Torment is because, once again, underneath all this 3 categories is Keith and Tina stress level rising up. We got to put these chairs back in their original spots. I got to clean that upside down cross in my carpet. I got to put together my office, which is in shambles because of what the spirits did. All these wine bottles you see scattered on the floor, I got to put all those back in the case, knowing that they can do that again, and they did. So that's the torment. The frequency of the torment creates the frequency of the stress, which this thus increases the frequency of the torment. It's a weird circle. You know, things are going to gradually escalate because now we're getting frustrated. You know, the first few times I did this, it's an inconvenience. It's always an inconvenience to repair your house for something you didn't do, right? If the poltergeist destroys my house and I have to fix it, I have to hire repairmen and women to come in to fix it. That's money out of my pocket. That's time away from work. That's me explaining to other people why I need you to do this, why I'm missing work. That increases stress. And that stress is going to feed and increase both communication, trickery, and torment. Going back to that snowball effect. And the Bothell House torment often came after some form of communication, meaning precursor of something bad about to happen. Good example, for a period of maybe 2 to 3 months, I was having the words die KL written in my office wall, written on my bedroom doorway, as you can see in the picture on the left, that card, and written inside my car, the car that I drive to everywhere, the words die KL. Now, my name is Kith Linder. My initials is KL, all right? The middle picture you see is my office. What do you see? You see the words die KL. What do you see in the middle? My bar stool. The bar stool from the kitchen is now in my office. What you can't really see in the picture written on the desk, the wooden desk, is the words die KL. Now, once again, torment, but communication. What came after that moment was the 2 monitors, those monitors right there, caught fire, right? Me and Tina were asleep, maybe 11 a.m. in the morning on a Sunday morning, 2014. We wake up and our upstairs is filled with smoke. The fire alarms are ringing. And we respond to my office where the smoke was coming from. And these computer monitors were on fire. Now, what's interesting about this fire that I've never experienced with any other fire in my life was you extinguish the fire. And when you turn your back from the fire, I mean, you've extinguished it, the fire is out. Now you've turned your back to go get some cleaner materials or discard or whatever, and the monitors catch back on fire. All right. This happened several times, sort of like the plant where I told you I walked it back downstairs. I'm walking back up. I hear a noise. I turn back around. The plant's right behind me, right behind me. On this one, we extinguish the fire. It's extinguished. The fire is extinguished. There's no small flames or anything. The fire is extinguished, ladies and gentlemen. We turn around, I turn around and about to walk out and it flames back on, okay? The picture you see at the very bottom is my leg, my right leg, and the x-ray from my right leg. January 2nd, 2014, I had a weird fall coming downstairs and I tore my right patella tendon, meaning I dislocated my knee. What you see in the x-ray is my kneecap and my thigh muscle. And it requires surgery to repair, it required 2 weeks of rehabilitation, 6 weeks of physical therapy. When the investigators, Steve Mera and Don Phillips, came to the United States with Nick Kyle, former president of SSPR, one of the EVPs one of the questions they asked through audio recording device was, did you push Keith down the stairs? And the response they got was, we, and I'm quoting, we pushed Keith down the stairs. They used we. They didn't say I, me, it was we. We pushed. Now the time period of when I fell was January 6, 2014 is when I fell. The time period when Stephen Murray came to my house and lived in my house and asked this question was April of 2016. So it was over 2 years before I could get an answer of, was my fall an accident or was my fall a deliberate? Okay, once again, DI-K-L. Wall writing is definitely a form of communication in the sense of when a spirit, ours included, begins writing on your wall, yes, there's torment involved because let me tell you, every time the spirits wrote on our wall in my office, we were advised, and rightfully so, to paint over it, right? The advice given was you want to paint over that immediately because to leave it on your wall means they can grab a foothold. They get stronger if that stuff stays on your wall, something to that effect. Seems like sound advice. We would have done it anyways, but it seems like sound advice. You want, if they do graffiti, if somebody vandalized your home, you would paint over your wall anyway. So this is not a bridge too far. We always painted over our wall when we had these writings appear. However, as you can see, they would just write again, all right? It is frustrating because yes, you can paint over a wall. You can buy a bucket of paint, you can spend some money, go to the paint store, buy a bucket of paint, and you can paint over the wall, knowing that tomorrow this is gonna happen all over again, and most times it did. So now we're definitely in the tormenting phase of repetition. How do we make this stuff stop? I'm spending money, I'm tired of painting over the wall, and what does this stuff even mean? Okay, now fast forward, those familiar with the story already know where I'm going with this, but the symbols, once again, like I said, like a foreign language. You can write a symbol, you're communicating with me. I don't necessarily have to understand it, but you are communicating with me. Now, this happened in my office a lot, meaning the upside down man. We call this the upside down man. The picture you see on the left and the two on the far right is different occasions, but the same symbol being drawn. You see on behind the computer monitor and the television of an upside down man. That was easy to decipher, meaning I went to the internet and I was very descriptive of what I was seeing and I typed it in Google, and multiple websites brought me to Native American websites. And the answer was that symbol to Native Americans means two things. A man has died or a man is about to die, okay? And usually, and this is their websites, meaning that if a man has died, he was either murdered or he died of a disease. Example giving on the websites was smallpox. Smallpox. Those are really the only two instances where you would draw that symbol as a marker of someone. Somebody died in battle, you wouldn't draw this symbol. Somebody died of natural causes of old age, you wouldn't draw this symbol. The symbol is primarily used by Native Americans to signify that somebody died from a disease, example, smallpox, or they were murdered. Okay, these are important clues to a researcher. Okay, because you can go and study that and be like, oh, Keith is just not telling me something. I can go look that up myself, and you'll get the same answer that I got, or the same conclusion that I got. But these Black letters or these Black writings do not tell you what this stuff is made out of. All right, it does not tell you what it's made out of. I took a piece of the wall writing and to a laboratory, and they, not me, it was their advice to me after hearing about my case, said, give us a piece of this stuff, Keith, you claim you have, and we might be able to tell you it's makeup. Key word is it's makeup. And what they use, what is called an XRD gun, and they came back with the makeup of what we now know to be bone black. All right. Now, the gun that you see, this electronic hand device you see on the left, does not tell you something is bone black. It gives you the makeup of what the black oil is. You have to take that makeup, meaning whatever it picked up in the material, and go around asking people, hey, I got 5 elements in this oil. What is that? What is the conclusion there? And I went to 5, maybe 6 art galleries throughout the country. And when I gave them that makeup, multiple of the art galleries said, that makeup is bone black. That's what bone black consists of. And I'm like, well, what is bone black? Bone black is incinerated buffalo or bison bone. Incinerated buffalo or bison bone. It is the original form of paint used by Native Americans and other ancient disciplines, if you will, for calligraphy and pictography. Now, this definitely meets the definition of calligraphy or pictography. If you've ever ventured to the United States or anywhere and walked into a cave or traveled down a river, you can see similar symbols like this written along the mountainside, along the walls and caves and in taverns, because picture before words was the primary use of communication. That's where we get the word pictography and calligraphy. Bone black to Native Americans was the primary tool at a certain time for the pictography and the calligraphy. Okay, it's too uncanny or too coincidental that you would have a Native American symbol written multiple times in my office, implying that a man has died or is about to die, take your pick, and the ingredients used or the substance used to write that is incinerated buffalo bone. Okay, I find that too coincidental to ignore. And that was how, in the final analysis of this case as to the Native American component attributed to the Bothell House, but there's more. How we doing, Chris? Break, question?
If you'd like to call a break now, we can do that. Would be a good point. Yep. So
I'm good. I just see chat stuff.
Yeah, it's up to
Q&A or any
still going. So let's stop for a moment. Let's minimize the stop the share screen for a moment so we can see you again, and we'll take it from there. So let's go back to the beginning. And a lot of these aren't questions so much as observations, so we'll leave those for the moment. Keith should read Darren Ritson's upcoming book, Poltergeist, Paralyze and Contagion. I have sent this to Darren. I don't know if he's actually here or not. Is Darren Ritson with us tonight? No, Darren Hudson. No Darren yet, as far as I can see. Which is a good... I'll try and get a copy sent to you. Caroline says they had a case investigated, reported activity in the home with the owner and a daughter. Max C. If poltergeists are aiming to communicate and have the power to move heavy objects and manipulate things in complex ways, why are their messages seldom clear? Why do we generally not know what they're trying to tell us? What's going on there? Keith, what do you say to that one?
Good question. One of the things I've noticed, and you're right, why, if they're so smart, why don't they just, why does that be a riddle, right? Why, tell us what you want, be very descriptive. You obviously own the floor, and just tell us what you want. Why all these little, what I call cookie crumbs? One of the things I noticed with the EVPs that were captured inside the Bothell House were the spirits or the voices captured, I should say, when they would refer to our electronic devices or the researchers' electronic devices, not in the proper term. One of the infamous EVPs captured by Steve Maradon took place in the hallway, where they were setting up a listening device, not a camera, not even a camera. And upon review later on of the footage, they learned of these voices in the background, and the voices kept saying, "Image detector. It's a camera. It's a camera. It's a camera." No, it's not. It's not a camera. It's a voice recorder. And they used the word image detector. Well, I don't know what an image detector is. Neither men had an image detector in the house, but we often were verbalizing infrared camera, motion camera. So obviously the spirit knows my name is Keith because it's writing my name on the wall, KL, it knows my name. But why is it referring to certain electronic devices that I view incorrectly when we multiple times would voice out motion camera or things of that nature? So where I'm going with that is, there seems to be a level, it's weird. It's a child adolescent component of just being cryptic. It's just, we don't want to give you, meaning you, me, and everybody listening today, we don't want to give y'all all the answers. But what's interesting to them, and I believe this wholeheartedly, what's interesting to them is us jumping through all these hoops to find the answer. Okay? We know that every time we would get more activity, I'm talking when the researchers were in the house, the time when we get more activity and more evidence is when they were, meaning the paranormal teams, were configuring the equipment before the investigation started. Okay, the spirits would home in and give commentary of what everybody's doing. They seem to have an interest and fascination of, hey, what's that? What's he doing? What's that? And even one would tell the other, and these are multiple voices. They're having a conversation about us, like we're having a conversation about them. We just can't hear them. And one of them, and it's on my YouTube channel, one of the spirits says, "Go get it. Go take it." He said, that's an image detector. It tells the other one, like it had, rank or something, seniority. Go take it. And then you hear snickering. You really hear snickering. And another voice comes back and says, "You chickened out." And you're like, you and me here, and I'm like, what? And you hear that voice underneath our own, and the voices say, "You chickened out." So I think they get a rise, if you will, of our level of curiosity. It's almost like, I hate to say it, like they're studying us. It's kind of weird. We study animals in cages or something,
Yeah.
We give up. So yeah, it's just weird.
I've seen the description. I think I wrote it myself 20 years ago, that poltergeists are like alien psychologists experimenting upon their victims. What do you think of that as a description of it? Alien because they're not human. They don't have the same mental apparatus as us. So therefore their actions often seem completely irrational. But Keith, do you think alien psychologists experimenting upon their victims gives you...
I'm not I can't say yes or no. I do know there is a hierarchy or IQ of what they can do compared to what we can do. They seem their level of observation is very strong. Um, Obviously, they found interest, but why is where I get lost as to why. You know, why Keith and Tina. Um, you know, why the wall writings. I know we as humans, we put, you know, I saw the 666 on the wall, and the spirit wrote that, not us. And one of the dings I got from skeptics is, you wrote that on there. Why would a Portuguese write both 666 and upside down man side by side and whatnot? And I say, I believe the 666 was written down for the skeptics. I believe it was a false positive or a red herring to make people not be fascinated with this case, because Hollywood has taken the 666,
Yeah,
turned it upside down, no pun intended, but it's taken it and given it back to us to mean something totally false and incorrect.
yeah,
So spirit, in trying to conjure up fear, I mean, the spirit is trying to conjure up fear and anxiety in me and Tina, probably pulled a psyche file in our file cabinet and say, Christian, okay, so this back to them written on the wall is going to create, it's going to make Keith and Tina overcompensate. And we did. I mean, you can't but help but dial 911 to the Catholic Church when you walk into your office and there's 666 written on your wall. You can't help but do that. You know, oh my God, 666 there. You know, the demon is here. And they, however, are in the corner just getting barrels of laughs and like, yeah, that experiment worked. But I tell people, you know, some of that stuff written on the wall was not for us. It was meant for the skeptic and the cynic, because they want to keep a wall between the two. They don't want too much help coming in the home. You know, they want to control traffic, if you will, and they want to keep me and Tina isolated. It's real important for poltergeists to keep the house occupants as isolated as much as possible, and to have people coming in doubting their story. And the best way to doubt someone's story is to throw so much stuff like our house to where the person coming in saying or thinks, that's too good to be true. No, all this can't be. No. Nice try, Keith and Tina. Nice try. We're out of here. And that's what the poltergeists want. And I wish a lot of paranormal teams would take that into consideration when they go into a home environment, of not automatically thinking all the time, that's too good to be true. No. I see a little hokey going on. No. That hokey going on is the spirit communicating with you, not us.
Keith, do you need a bathroom break and get a cup of coffee or anything? Should we have a 5-minute break?
I'm refill my water.
Okay, if you're ready, if people are ready, we'll persist in a minute. I've just been going through this, and there's a lot of really complicated discussion about the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, and whether there are minds behind the poltergeist, and rules to communicate. Andy Wilson's talking about, it seems there are rules to the communication, as in they're indistinct and symbolic, which could be linked to the subconscious. Tony Hayes says it suggests it's the subconscious mind and not the consciousness at work. Why is it so random and without any structure? Well, I'm sure you'll deal with these points in the second part, but I'm just going through for clear questions at the moment. And Kieran's quite a bit here. I'm going to send you all the comments afterwards, and we will go through all these before the end of the evening. But the first major question, direct question, is from Susan, who says, did the activity increase when the investigators arrived at the house?
Actually, the opposite, Susan. The activity decreased. And this is, other parapsychologists have called this out and noticed it, and it's true. Even Steve. Poltergeist activity, by and large, operate on the bell curve. You know, they go. There's a moment where the activity goes, up, and it's going to plateau, go down. Most researchers, not all, but most researchers, by the time they arrive on the scene, the activity is on its downcline. It really is. And here's why. because as it's going up, me and Tina, keep in mind, we were experiencing activity in 2012. The first researchers didn't step foot into the house until 2014. So we did not go public because at this early on, you're not really sure you should. You know, you're still in disbelief. People are going to call you crazy, silly, attention seeking, because once you open up that communication with the world about your paranormal experience, whoa, they're going to come in, all types of people. So that bell curve where they put, and I think the poltergeists know this, is they're getting the activity is ramping up tremendously, and to the point where it gets to its highest peak, and then me and Tina are running out the house. We're like, help, 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 help. Well, the paranormal team's on the receiving end of that help, 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 help. But not all of them respond right away. And I don't know if they should or shouldn't, but they don't necessarily. And by that I mean is they want to go through a list of questions. They want to interview you. They want to talk to you. They want to da 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 da. They want to, you know, they're going to bring you through the ringer psychologically, see if you're on the up and up. Well, guess what? That doesn't negate the activity. The poltergeist doesn't care what y'all do. They're going to do what they do. So by the time y'all say, he's on the up and up, keep continue telling the truth. Now let's go to the house. We'll go to the house and see what's really going on. Well, guess what? The activity is on its decline now. It is. And that's why in our house is a perfect example of that. Of by the time the researchers left, the activity started picking up again. What you really have to do is you have to live at the location. It's not a poltergeist is one phenomena that you really can't visit a location and say, yes and no, day one, day two, not even day 5. You have to live, plant yourself there, because that activity is going to spike, it's going to decline. And usually by the time the researchers arrive, it's on the decline, in which then me and Tina were looking foolish, like we were over-exaggerating. Oh, okay, well, why is it not blowing up now? We're here. Why is it not catching fire? We're here. And we're like, you know, you guys came on the decline. Ghost Adventures came to our house, and we had not had activity for 4 weeks, right? So therefore, the activity in the house was sort of quiet, and they wanted to see the major stuff. They wanted to see objects flying, blowing up, fires, and the poltergeist is never going to give that to the researcher. That's for the house occupants. I mean, very few researchers see that. I mean, but there's other data that they could have compiled that would have sort of added validity, but they didn't know what they're doing. Also, I'll also reiterate, in 2013, the house was quiet for the whole year, for 14 months. So the activity did abate. I'm not going to say it left. I don't think it never left. But we had no activity for the entire year of 2013, and the activity didn't really come back until spring of 2014. So to go, you know, to ask the question as to why, you know, do I think the activity spikes or whatnot? Yeah, it's just going to go up and down.
Okay. Andy Wilson says, if it's all linked to the same rules as quantum physics, then the phenomena can only operate when not being observed directly. And then Max replies, but much of the phenomena, some of the phenomena has been observed. What you just said about staying in the house, the only successful, sorry, I've been eating ice cream, the only successful witnessing of poltergeist phenomena we ever managed was in '96 for my group, when the Cheltenham Psychic Research Group spent 6 months with members of the team taking it in turns to live and work in a pub with the family who lived there. And during that period, we did record phenomena. So I think Keith's completely right in that respect. We had to become part of the family unit. We had to become part of the whole thing. But most people can't just go and stay for 6 months in a property and work there. Do you know what I mean? That's one of the great things which is getting in our way. Moving down, Caroline said, did you and Tina have a strong religious belief in God when you moved in?
Not strong. Me and Tina, by definition, were not religious. We were raised Christian. I'm a Southern Baptist, so is Tina.
Mhm.
But we were not going to religious service every day or Sunday. We did not wear our religion on our sleeve. We did not pray before a meal. But obviously, I had Bibles in my home because Bibles caught fire. But I was more spiritual. You know, I was spiritual in the sense that I knew the difference between right and wrong, but it was never my job to tell others or myself, you know, how to live or to live. But um, when this happened, obviously you go back to your upbringing as a means of defense and support. So, yeah, that's when the religious paraphernalia, a lot of it we bought. We didn't own a lot of religious paraphernalia until after the activity had reached a mass level. And we were advised, both name your denomination, the advice was the same. Wear or display religious paraphernalia to get these spirits out of your house. However, the opposite effect happened. Obviously, 3 Bibles and then other religious paraphernalia either caught fire or were destroyed or were outright missing or still missing. But no, we were not religious coming into the home. Perfect example being we were not married, we were boyfriend and girlfriend.
There's a comment from Aaron, which I'll, because this is my area, I'll quickly reply on this. He says he thinks the original number in the Bible was 616, but Hollywood and the music industry made 666 more popular. The actual earliest documents we have, which feature that particular passage, do say 616. But through biblical criticism, through the way we've studied the scriptures, we have multiple sources. And we can create family trees, and we can use genetics type programming to actually go back and work out what the original text most likely said now, which we couldn't at the time in the 80s when 616 was popularized as the correct reading. You'll find it given in the footnotes of your Bible, but actually the correct number is 666, we now believe, and 616 is simply the earliest extant version and the earliest, you know, fragment of papyri. And we've got various early biblical papyri, but as very few people here are remotely interested in the history of the Bible and biblical manuscripts, I think we'll move on from that. Inska says, well, the drawings were upside down, so it's 999. And interestingly, in England, 999 is the number you call to collect the police, you know, to get the emergency services. But yeah, I can see that. Keith, I think we've got a lot of comments, and I'm sure there's a great deal you want to say about them at the end. But for the moment, shall we push on and you'll do the second part of your presentation? Are you okay with that? And then we'll come back to all these.
Yeah, let's push on.
Let's do that, because I prefer to learn from you than, you know,
Okay.
carry on for the moment. Then we'll come back to this in a minute. Right, okay, let's do it.
Okay. So, share screen.
Keith, one last question I just spotted. Christian Lander asks, did you bring in items of other religions? I mean, were there other faiths? I suppose smudging counts, doesn't it?
Yes, we smudged several times. We were advised. I was not familiar with the concept of smudging or saging, but I went out and bought some and tried at the advice given. Once again, it brought about the opposite effect, or not the desired effect. One of the things the Poltergeist did with our sage sticks, probably as a means of breaking my will and Tina's, is it wrote on the wall with one of the sage sticks the upside down cross, the upside down man, 666. You know, which mentally, you know, there's a mental component to poltergeist activity more than there is a physical one, of helplessness. You want the house occupants' helplessness or feeling helplessness as possible, much as possible. And let me tell you, when you come home and your sage stick, the one you thought was a weapon against the whatever's living there, but matter of fact, it's a tool for them to use against you, it's very demoralizing. And once again, you're like, okay, where do we go from here? Because now it's writing on the wall with the sage stick. We introduced the sage stick to the environment, not them. So, and now they're using it to write on the wall. So what you're seeing now, can everybody see my screen? Can you see my screen, Chris?
I can see it fine. Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay. So going back, the 666 that you see in this picture, that's on the office door. That's the office door in the upstairs office. A portion of that door, that entire door, one of the doors, two doors, one of the doors, me and my friend Patty took out of the house and we drove it to a paint store. The paint store is about 5 minutes from where I live. And I wanted to see what the paint store could tell me. This is the paint store, right? This is what they do. Can they tell me, because they're going to be objective, of what this black stuff is? All right, I want to get their honest assessment. They don't know about a haunted house. They don't know about anything. They just deal with paint all day. They could not determine or have never seen that type of paint before. This is their words. Now, what you're seeing right now is a close-up of the truck that we use to transport the door to the paint store. Now, the truck has what is called a bed cover. It's a cover that goes over the bed of the truck. And as we got back home, we got the door in the back of the truck. We're removing the door from the truck. And we noticed these black markings on the ceiling of the truck cover, the bed, the ceiling, were these black, what you see here. This is the truck 2016. And I remember when I first saw it, I remember it looking eerily similar to the black markings in my office. Now, the wall, the stuff you see right here, the 666 and the upside down man, from afar, meaning you're standing a few feet away, it doesn't look like much. You see a conclave, or you can't see a conclave of black dots. All you see is the 666 and the upside down man. But if you were to walk up close with the naked eye, mind you, you would see this. This is how it looks up close, meaning put your hand in front of your eyes. That's how close you are standing to my door. This is what it looks like closely. So this is close-up view. This is far away view. And this is the truck. This is on the truck now, 2016. The 666 in my office and the upside down man were 2014, 2 years apart. Now, once again, close up of the wall markings in my office, as you can see. Now look at the 3 pictures to the right. These are close-ups of the 666, okay? Get a photographic memory of that. That's important. Get a photographic memory of that. You see the dots, you see the strings, you see like the webbing, the thin lines, the razor thin lines. All of that, trillions of them, I'll use that number, form what you see 666. I mean, trillions of these, right? And so you see that this is the door, this is the office door. This is the truck. Truck, office door. Truck or office door. See those dots? See those little dots? See those dots that extend and form what look like webbing or lines or thin lines, and they all connect. And they, as a totality, or totality, form what you see 666 or upside down, man. Pick your pick. Truck. See those dots? See the little arms coming out from under them, connecting other dots? Something was forming in the bed of the truck on our journey from the paint store. Now, this is the door and the truck side by side, 2014, 2016. You don't have to be an FBI or Quantico analysis or scientist to know that these are the same markings and designs, almost identical. What makes it interesting, ladies and gentlemen, is the wall markings on the door, 2014, majority of the wall markings me and Tina experienced, we came home and found. The truck, what you see on the bottom, 2016, we were in the truck when this happened. Okay, we were in the truck. Once again, I've been attacked while traveling abroad. I've been on hotel rooms 5,000 miles away, 3,000 miles away. I've been tagged. I've had stuff thrown at me. So it should be a far-fetched idea to believe a wall writing like this, or writing, once again, communication. While we're taking the door to the paint store, this is what's appearing on the truck on the journey either to or back from the paint store. Okay. Now, this right here, we're going to talk about escalations and as a means of, once again, there's communication, there's torment, right? Now, what you see at the top, let's go left from right or right to left, pick your pick. You'll see, once again, I'm calling attention to the upside down man symbol, okay? The upside down man symbol. What you see on the top from left to right was written, the substance was bone black. That's incinerated buffalo or bison bone, all right? And the upside down man. I paint over the wall, they paint this again, okay? By the repetition, by them constantly painting the same symbol over and over, we have to, and it's safe to assume, that they're communicating something to us. This means something, right? You see it on every wall, this upside down man. Now, I would paint over this. I would go to the paint store and buy paint. And some of the pictures you can sort of see the paint marks or the different layers. I would paint over this and they would just do it again. Now, what I did, because I'm not a painter, I'm not a painter by profession, okay? What you see in the bottom left with the die KL, the pictures with the red borders around it, the red frame, those pictures, the reason I put those in red and the other in black is because I want to call attention to the ones at the bottom left of here, because this substance is different than the substance above. And you can see the different paint layers because I've been painting this room at least 12 times these markings, okay, at least. The dye KL, the substance used for the dye KL, we learned, and I didn't know this because I was a painter. When I would paint over the dye KL and the markings, upside down man, it would bleed through the paint. It would come through the paint and it was impossible to paint over. Now, this is very smart and this supports the theory and belief that I share and subscribe to, that poltergeists are sentient beings with extreme level of intelligence, okay? Because I'm not a painter, I don't know this. But I later learned, because I talked to people who specialize in paint, and I brought them in for their objective analysis, and I learned that painting over gloss paint is difficult, but it does require a fair amount of time and special treatment to produce a clean and consistent finish. If you're going to paint over gloss paint, this is gloss paint, what you see in the yellow and the red, the bottom left. That's gloss paint. If you're going to paint over gloss paint, it's very difficult to paint them. You're going to start by lightly sanding the gloss paint, and then cleaning the surface so that you can remove the glossy surface that makes it difficult for paint to adhere to. Now, the reason why I believe the poltergeist introduced gloss paint to my office was two reasons. Number one, it was telling me that to stop painting over these upside down men, stop painting over them. Or if you are going to paint over that, we're going to make it extra harder for you too, because from here on out, they've migrated from bone black to using glossy paint, which we, myself and others, found it extremely hard to paint over because we, myself, were not familiar with gloss paint. It was maybe after the third or fourth time where I was like, Why isn't this working? Why can I not paint over this stuff? It's not difficult if you're a painter to see this and say, oh, you just got to sand it down to where you remove the gloss level. But to a person non-experienced in painting, to a person non-experienced, like a person non-experienced with smudging or the paranormal, yeah, this could be very difficult. I mean, if it's difficult to a professional, as it says off this painter's website, then it's going to be extremely difficult to me and Tina, right? This is off a painter's website. When it's time to repaint, there are lots of steps you should take. Lots of steps. This is because the new coat of painting over gloss paint, the new coat over gloss paint will not stick to the high gloss finish unless you prepare it thoroughly. Now, not knowing that and just painting at women, throwing countless money at a wall and not getting the results that I want to get is creating so much level of frustration in me, and it's beating me down mentally and financially because I can't remove this paint off my wall. But I want people to really understand, because for the poltergeist to pivot to this, and there's more examples, but to me, this is way up there with revealing their level of targeting, which I said earlier, their level of communication, their level of torment, and just their level of intelligence. Okay? I did not know the specifics about paint as it relates to gloss paint, but the poltergeist did. Okay? It did. Now, we'll never know, because it's impossible to know where it got both the gloss paint from and where it got the bone black from. We'll never know that. Okay? I have theories where it got from, but there's no way to prove that. But this you can prove, because this came from a paint website of how difficult it is to paint over gloss paint. And if you are going to do it, it's going to take time. Take time out of what? Keith and Tina's daily schedule, Keith and Tina's daily routine, Keith and Tina's livelihood. Understand, whatever I paint over, they can quickly do in a bat of an eye the next day or as soon as my back is turned. So you're spinning your wheels. I'm throwing money and time down a bottomless pit. If I could get people in the paranormal community to understand from a house occupant's point of view, my point of view, the level of frustration we experience from each picture times 20, to let you understand the level of frustration, you know, the intelligence being revealed here, the deliberate intelligence from an entity letting us know is, we got you, Keith. You know, look at the picture to the left, Die KL. You'll see in the upside down man, you'll see the upside down man behind the computer monitor. That's a scissor. That's a scissor stabbed dead center of a head. That's a fatal wound to anybody, right? Fatal. That scissor was taken out was resting on my computer desk, and that scissor is stabbed deep into the head of an upside down man. The scissor. I didn't do that. It did that. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you another, we'll get down, I'm going to show you another similar picture of that same scissor. It's going to blow your mind. This is the video of, and I'll share this with you, Chris, but these videos are on my YouTube channel. But once again, gloss paint, impossible, well, I say impossible, very difficult to paint over. And they used it because we had been painting over their other stuff. And they're like, we're going to make it difficult for you moving forward. This is the door put under a microscope, magnified 1,000 to 1,500,000 times magnification. Where you see on the left, you see that X I want you to look at that X. These are black dots that are invisible to the naked eye that the microscope uncovered, which suggests the black oil, the black dots, didn't come from, it wasn't applied to the door. I don't want people to think the spirits applied this to the door. It's my belief after discovering this, that everything that you see with the naked eye, meaning the macro level, what we see on the wall, that's the macro level. We see that with the naked eye began at the micro level, the micro level. Those dots grew as I decreased magnification, as I'm coming into the surface of the wood frame. Those dots you see on the right, we grew tentacles. We'll use the word tentacles, and reached out to other dots. It grew bigger and bigger. As you can see at the bottom picture, as it got bigger and bigger, what gets bigger and bigger is coming to the macro level. This substance, this bone black, came through or formed through the filament of the wood structure to form what we have here. This is not mold. This is not mildew. This is not none of that. What you see is the analysis is in a bone black. When you put a microscope over the all white portion of the door, as you see the X, there's no black markings where I put that X. However, you know, if you put a digital microscope over that spot, that's what you get. And as I got closer and closer to the macro level, those dots increased in size. Here's another close-up example of what I'm mentioning to you. I don't know if you can see my cursor, my mouse cursor. I hope you can. You can see right here, this line reaching toward this blob. You can see all these things connected. Now, what I don't know, what I would love to know, and maybe y'all can, some of you can carry the banner and study this also, is which came first. I mean, how soon? Are we talking instantaneous or are we talking gradual? Because I can tell you with the microscope, and I still have the door. So if anybody got a digital microscope, I still have portions of the door. This is what it looks like under magnification. And as you can see, these dots turn to lines, and these lines are reaching to bigger dots. This is huge. This right here, this is huge. This is huge revelation we're talking about here. The ramifications, the science, I don't even think we're still dealing, I don't think we're still in the paranormal realm anymore. I really think we're in the supernatural realm, because this is magnified, and I would hesitate. There's other digital microscopes that can go deeper in magnification, but they get more expensive. I stopped at 1500 magnification, but as you can see, there's a lot of there. Macro level, right? House occupants, researchers, we all see this, mischaracterized, misjudged, misassumed. Micro level. And I want to be very clear. It is my belief, my theory, that that door you see over there, 666, see all that white where there is no markings? That's what's there. That's what our naked eye can't see. If our eyes could magnify to 1500 magnification, we would be seeing this in a room. We might even be seeing that all on every wall in the room, if we could see at that level of magnification with our eyes. But with a device, this is pulled off the white portion of the door. Macro level, micro level. Now, it's a fair question. Why would a poltergeist or spirit or whatever use bone black when it has multiple? Well, my office, it's an office, keyword is, this is my office. when I have multiple pens, markers in my office for the spirit disposal. Okay, this is my office. This is not the kitchen. This is not the bedroom. This is not the bathroom. This is an office, so it's not a far-fetched idea to think, oh, you have markers in your office. And I do. You have Sharpies in your office. You have pencils. You have pens. The poltergeist, for lack of a better word, purposely went out of its way to use bone black, not any of these pen or pencils that were already present in the office. You know, if a burglar is going to break into your house and leave you a note, it's safe to say he's going to use the pen and paper already in your location. He's not going to bring his own. He's not going to go to Office Depot and buy a pen or paper and say, thank you very much, we robbed your house, thank you for the television. No, he's going to find a piece of paper, piece of pen already there, and he's going to use that. The poltergeist, this is very important, communication, ignored all this. This is the pen, this is the pen, you know. It didn't use none of that. It used bone black. And I said bone black, once again, is incinerated buffalo or bison bone. To understand why bone black was used and not any substance in my office that were readily available, we have to go back and understand American history, okay? So I'm gonna give a quick trip to American history and why it relates to bone black, okay? In the mid-1800s in the United States of America, there were over 26 million buffalo roaming throughout the North American, from Canada throughout North America in the early 1800s, 26 million buffalo. By the time of the early 1900s, there were less than 100 buffalo, less than 100. 26 million buffalo were exterminated for what? Their hides, their fur. Just say their fur, their hides. The carcass demonstrated in this picture from the movie starring Kevin Costner, Dancing with Wolves, is a perfect picture of how the buffalo were exterminated and how 99% of their hide or their body was discarded. The only thing taken from the buffalo at that time was its hide. Look at all this muscle left. Nothing else was taken. The hide was of importance in the 1800s and early 1900s, to where 26 million buffalo lost their lives at the early start or the arriving of the 20th century. It became such an issue in North America of this mass carcass of buffalo to where the carcass had to be hauled out in trucks. It was such a pollutant, you could not, there was bones and carcass for miles, as far as the eye can see, to where it became common to where they had to gather all the carcass and haul it off because it would litter the countryside. And I mean that, litter the countryside. And this is, the pictures are taken from museums and the Library of Congress of that endeavor. That's how much. Now, this bone that was left by the countryside, it was finally discovered, and somebody on the American side talked to somebody on the Native American side and realized that we can make use of the buffalo carcass, meaning the bone, as equally as we made use of the hide. And this is when the American side, not the Native American side, Native Americans already knew this. Native Americans, when they kill buffalo, they kill them for other things besides their hide. You know, the American side uses the hide, but realize, oh, there's other commodities here. And that's when bone black became commercialized. We realized that bone black, when you create it, when it becomes to that powdered form, becomes an instantaneous, probably the best water filtration you can imagine. The charcoal derived from bone black is in just about any aquarium you can imagine as a way of water purification. Now, pause this for a second and imagine a spirit drawing in my office wall, Bothell, Washington, upside down man. A man has died or was about to die or has died of smallpox or was murdered as demonstrated by the scissor stabbed in the head. And then imagine all these cow bones of 20 to 30 million buffalo killed in the plains of North America in the mid 1800s, okay? And one of the, I guess, wars or factions, if you will, between both New World and Old World, meaning Native American versus New World coming in, Old World going out, was the Native Americans upset, or being upset, rightfully so, of the mass extermination of buffalo, as well as territory. Now, let's go to the Pacific Northwest. In the Pacific Northwest, that's where I live. That's considered state of Washington, state of Oregon, and the state of California, or what make up the Pacific Northwest, especially Northern California. In the early 1800s, the same time period as the buffalo was being exterminated in the Midwest, the same time period, the American forest was being nearly exterminated in the Pacific Northwest. Both regions were heavily populated by Native Americans. Both regions. Both regions at their founding had to deal at one point in time a mass outbreak of smallpox. Okay? In the Pacific Northwest, over 150 to 250,000 Native Americans, some put the estimate at 1.5 million Native Americans lost their lives in the 1800s in Pacific Northwest to smallpox outbreaks. In Bothell alone, and this is easily researchable, 500 Native Americans, several tribes lost or were decimated as a result of smallpox. In Bothell, this picture you're looking at right now was taken in Bothell. This is Bothell in the 1800s. These are trees that were chopped down near and around the city of what is now known Bothell, or in and around what is now known Seattle, Washington, which is only 20 minutes from here. This is a cedar forest in Washington, D.C., 1910 to 1945. You can see mass extinction of trees, eerily similar to mass extinction of the American buffalo. Same time period, different region of the same country. This is Bothell, Washington in 1800s. I know where this area is right now. I can go to it in 5 minutes. This is the mass chopping down of trees in Bothell. And look what you see hauling the trees to the river where they are shipped downtown, the shipped down river to what eventually formed this city of Seattle. What do you see hauling the trees? You see oxes. Oxes, if you incinerate an ox, you can get bone black from an ox, meaning bone black, once again, is a derivative of buffalo, bison bone, cow bone, ox bone, same thing. This is probably a good example, in my opinion, as far as poltergeists are concerned, where you sort of understand this malevolent spirit's point of view of why every time I would paint over the upside down man symbol, it would write it back. Okay? During this time frame of when Bothell was formed, the Native Americans and the settlers at that time had major outbreaks in wars and factions. There were wars that broke out on both sides, where left many settlers dead, damaged, hurt, wounded, as well as Native Americans. Native Americans who were dead either of smallpox or frozen winters or war with settlers, bodies were often easily discarded and proper burial was rendered useless. Proper burial was even impossible. Therefore, you would find scattered Native American bones throughout the Pacific Northwest, including Bothell, Washington. It has to be viewed, to my opinion, as a metaphor of bone black, which is incinerated buffalo, bison, or cow bone. Another word for bone black is bone char. And you have the near extermination of buffalo in the 1800s, while at the same time you had the near extermination of the American trees. President Roosevelt, the extermination of the Pacific Northwest tree system was so detrimental and almost beyond repair to where the President of the United States, Roosevelt, had to make a decree to where it was now illegal to chop down trees, or if you did, there was a rigorous vetting process because trees were just being chopped down at will for far as the eye could see, miles and miles and miles, statewide, region-wide. So this, to me, helps me understand or expresses the importance of, this home research, this paranormal team that arrive in the home and study, and that's okay. I get that. That's very important. You need that. But there's also the research that requires you reviewing countless hours of microfilm in an office somewhere downtown where the truth might not be readily present, and it's going to be even harder to decipher because this took time to uncover. But the Poltergeist gave us a tremendous hint, It did not write in crayon. It did not write in marker. It did not write in highlighter pen. It did not write in permanent marker. It did not write in dry erase. It did not write in lipstick. It did not write in crayon. It did not write in blood. It did not write in plasma. All those things I just named, previous Poltergeist cases, the Poltergeist has written in those liquid substances. It has used in previous cases liquid readily available inside the house occupant's home. This Poltergeist decided to bring an external object, bone black, to write on the walls to indicate why, maybe, not saying it's justified, why it's there. Now, why me and Tina, I'll never know, but it did go out of its way to use bone black when there's 20 other liquid substances in the house that it could have used, or other substances outside the house. The San Pedro haunting, that Dr. Barry Taft investigated, the Poltergeist used blood plasma. There was blood plasma found written. The Humpty Doo Poltergeist case coming out of Australia. There was other substance used, crayon, rock, lead pencil. No, none of that this Poltergeist used. Why? Because he wanted us to understand or demonstrate its level of intelligence, its level of communication, its level of targeting, and letting us know that something horrible happened in the city of Bothell, not necessarily directly underneath the Bothell House, but in the city and region of Bothell. Okay, I'll finish up with talking about tormenting, which is, I saved the best for last, but equally important was the tormenting aspect of the haunting, as well as the communication. So we talked about the trickery, we talked about communication, and now the tormenting, which by and large is what poltergeists are mainly famous for.
Should we take another very brief break here just to give people a chance to...
Okay.
Yeah, so let's just quickly go through the questions again. And let's start with... Go back up to where we were last time. Unfortunately, Rob's had to go. Professor Gandhi, but we're recording, so luckily we'll be able to do that. And of course, Peter Hassel in New Zealand's had to drop off because of the time zones. Right, so Cheers had to go as well. She'll catch it on everything. Right, let's go back up. Yep. Right, here we go. So we'll start with, this poltergeist sounds like an abusive relationship. Isolation, destructiveness, manipulation. Sorry, I'll put my camera back on. Inducing a sense of helplessness. Is that what it felt like? If so, what are your feelings now and at the time towards it? Positive, negative, or just curious? That's from Max C. What would you say to that, Keith?
I mean, for our ordeal, there is a level of helplessness. There is a level of helplessness in documented cases elsewhere. There's definitely a level of isolation. There's two isolations going on in our home and what other poltergeist cases are. There's the isolation between us and the outside world, meaning the believing and non-believing community. Okay. And there's the isolation between the people in the home. The poltergeist in our home is trying to create a wall between me and Tina. It successfully did. Obviously, Tina's now my ex-girlfriend. And why it wants to create a wall is it's a very easy concept if you study the animal kingdom, right? A predator in the animal kingdom looks for the weakest link. That's its only means of survival. You know, it's going to go after the weakest animal, and before it can do that, it's going to study, and then if it's lions or any other cat family animal or wolf pack, they're going to identify the weak animal, and their goal is to separate it from the other community. They want to separate it. If they can separate it, it increases their chances of a successful hunt. So everything, if you watch how animals hunt, and I did after this poltergeist ordeal, I did before, but I really did now, and I learned so much because they're almost identical. The animal kingdom, the predator goal is to separate, and if it does, it might have a dinner that night. With Tina and me, the poltergeist is doing different things to both of us. There were times the poltergeist would attack Tina. There were times the poltergeist would attack me. There were times the poltergeist knew, and I can say this because it's in my book, the relationship Tina had before me, because Tina was divorced, she met me, was her marriage prior to meeting me ended in divorce because of infidelity. Her husband was a cheater, and she married him twice. She took him back a second time, he cheated again, and I cut it. So the poltergeist knew that. How it knew that, don't know, but it did. And therefore, during the course of this ordeal of everything happening, the poltergeist started putting in Tina's path, not mine, female jury in the home. Female jury in the home to where Tina would discover jury. Every woman knows what's hers and what's not hers. And Tina would bring this jury to me and question me. And why would she question me? Because there were times where I would work from home. I'm an IT specialist. I could work remotely like we're talking now. I can do what I do at work, I can do at home very easily. So I will work at home. Tina comes home from work and makes up the bed or clean the bathroom, finds a female earring, female bracelet. Obviously, she's going to leap to the conclusion that I had a woman in the home while she was not there. Okay, that creates a discussion, a heated debate, back and forth discussion. It takes Tina's mind on solving our poltergeist problem to now questioning me. It puts me on the defensive because now I'm being accused of something I didn't do. And now we're mad at each other. So our communication is fragmented now. And the poltergeist is still throwing things at us. You know, it doesn't stop. Oh, they're mad at each other. I'm going to stop. No. The poltergeist is going to stop. Matter of fact, it's going to intensify. All right. So now when we were both praying together, smudging, saging together, looking for help together, it's just me doing that now. Tina doesn't even know if she wants to trust me or be with me anymore. So that's that level of division, you know, of separate, divide, and conquer. And that happened a lot. So looking back, you know, there are things, it's a two-sided coin. I've learned so much about this ordeal, and I learn new stuff every day, and it's fascinating in the sense of finding out stuff and like, wow, this really happened. And there's a curiosity there for me, but there's also a part of me that knows that this thing ruined my life. This thing wrecked our home for 4 years and wrecked everything. But I want to do it again, heck no. But trying to turn lemon into lemonade is the summation of what I'm doing, or what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to turn lemons into lemonade, and the lemonade is the information sharing. The lemonade is the Q&A. The lemonade is the 3 books, and the lemonade is my own research, spending countless hours in library and websites. That's the lemonade. The lemon, if you bite into a lemon, it's still bitter. It's still better to go down that journey and talk about it and all the pitfalls and whatnot, because it's a lemon. But the lemonade is the portion of, okay, let me try to, look at a glass half full versus half empty. So that's where I'm at now.
Oh, sorry. So the next question down, or the next comment which I'm going to choose, is Kieran Farrell says, a question occurs. The upside down man symbolises someone who died an unusual death through disease or unnatural death. If this is communication, what is the poltergeist in the form of the person trying to say they died in this way, and who was that if so, who was that person? Sorry, I've got bad for it.
I don't know. That's the missing link. I mean, like I said, going back to the question of, I don't think our brain is where our brain tries to leap to Hollywood conclusions of, hey, poltergeist, if you tell me where your body's buried, I'll make sure you get a proper burial. Or if you lead me down the creek bed and I'm following you, just keep riding on trees and I'll follow because just tell us what you want. I would want the poltergeist to tell us what they want, right? Let's get it all out there. Obviously, we know someone died. I don't necessarily mean individual. Like we know 500 people died of smallpox in and around Bothell. A little over 1 million died in the Pacific Northwest. So I don't know if we can quantify it as to, one Native American in particular, because it would be hard to find that one individual unless the poltergeist led us to them, and they've shown no interest as of yet to do that. I mean, if you can say it's a camera, or we push Keith downstairs, why can't you just tell me or give me the latitude and longitude coordinates of where your body is buried, and I'll make sure we treat it right and get it to where it needs to go. But they don't do that. So I don't know. That's, like I said, that's the missing link. I would put that in the trickery category, and only in the sense of they're telling us a lot of stuff. They're telling us a lot, but they're not telling us what they want us to do. And no poltergeist case I've studied, they've never said, what do you want us to do? And we've asked it. Y'all have asked that, I've asked that, what do y'all want? What do you want? If I go somewhere, I tell you what, you ask me, what do you want? I'll tell you. I go to the doctor's office, what do you want? Oh, I want this pain to stop going. Okay, well, take these medicine, it'll go away. You got to tell us what you want, but I don't think that's what they're really are at. I just think they, it's just weird. I think it's just a trickery aspect because we know they're intelligent. We know they have capability that we don't, but they seem to not want to help us help them, if that makes sense.
There's some good stuff here that I've just noticed that people have posted, which I think is quite interesting. Eric Lewis says there's an upside down man in the major arcana of the tarot pack. Kieran says it's the Hanged Man, and Caroline says the Hanged Man card symbolises someone who thinks they're trapped in a situation, but they're not. The Hanged Man in the card can easily remove themselves from the tie they are in and the situation, but they don't realise. It's actually quite, the symbolism is quite interesting there, isn't it? But then we get to the upside down man could also be interpreted as a cow or a bull head with an X above, and Christian sent the screenshot. Do you think it could be a buffalo head with an X above it? That's also possible, isn't it?
Could be. I mean, why I lean more towards the Native American of the the man has died is, like I said, I talked to Native Americans to get their feedback on that symbol, and they're very clear as to, you don't draw that symbol for everything. It's pictography patterns and diagrams are very specific. And if you and I was to say stroll through the woods, right, and we find an area where we saw an upside down man symbol in the Pacific Northwest, that symbol would tell us two things. There's two things the Native Americans want us to walk away knowing from seeing that in the woods somewhere. Number one, this is dead territory. You're walking on hollow ground here. And number two, whoever is laying underneath the soil here died, were murdered or died of a disease. So you, me, and I are supposed to take that information and either go back to where we came or proceed left or right very carefully. If they died because of old age or something, Native Americans, they would put their belongings. You see belongings that they had either at the time of death or things that made them, or maybe, like I said, jewelry, clothing, whatnot. You will see that decorated around their gravesite. This upside down man, if we stumbled upon it, would mean, something went afoul. Something was afoul. Something happened here. A good example of that, we can come to modern day. I was telling Tony, I think he's still on here a few weeks back. In the United States, we have hurricanes. It's hurricane season right now, and I don't know how much of y'all are familiar with the hurricanes in the United States, but Hurricane Katrina, years back, I got how many years ago, Hurricane Katrina came ravaging through the United States and tore up New Orleans and Louisiana. When the flood waters receded back into the ocean, it left 1,000 people were dead. A lot of people, majority of people died in their homes. A lot of people died drowned in their homes. When they went to go retrieve the bodies or do a tally of how many people were dead, or to collect them, they sent out two teams. One team was to identify the houses. The other team was to go retrieve. You send a team to go identify and find the bodies. The way how they identified the houses that had bodies in them, was they would draw an upside down man on the door or the front of the house. There'd be a spray paint, and they would draw it on the door. That way, a person coming in a boat or vehicle, search and rescue, mainly rescue or retrieve, they knew what houses to go into, because you don't want to go to 2,000 houses if you don't have to. You don't want to go to 2,000. You don't want to go to houses with bodies in them. So to help the other guy was, if they saw a house with an upside down man, they knew there's a dead body in that house. We want to go in there and retrieve it. If it doesn't have nothing written on the wall outside, we'll go to a house that does. And I saw that. I thought that was very interesting. But they only do that in natural disasters, meaning the people who died in that house did not die of natural causes, okay? They did not die of natural causes. So let's say Hurricane Katrina happened, and then the day they went to that house to see if there was a body inside, and there was, they drew the upside down man, and then as soon as they drew the upside down man, a meteor came and hit the earth and froze and killed everybody, right? Everybody just died, right? Everybody died. Let's just say another civilization comes in after 500,000 years later, and they come to that house, or another planet or whatever, or another civilization, and they come to that house, and they see on the front of the houses, right? Not every house, just a few houses. This is 1,000 years later. And they see on that house, what's that upside down man symbol? What is that? Why is it not on every house? They have no records of a hurricane ever taking place. They have no record of Hurricane Katrina. They don't even know what that is, all right? The body may have been disintegrated to the point where it might even still be in the house. Animals, creatures, rodents may have gotten to it. So you have to sort of understand now, it makes what we see on our wall, on my wall, it brings it more into focus of, what? That's interesting. That is really fascinating, because we do the same thing now, during natural disasters. You don't see that in a murder scene or a fire. It's only in mass disasters where they will go in, and even the one recently in New York and the flood, now it's become a standard amongst search and rescue in the United States for natural disasters, especially for hurricanes. You draw the upside down symbol to imply somebody's dead inside. But if you could come back 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, you would not know what happened except to say, that's only on certain houses. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting when I saw that on CNN.
Inska asks, did the residents after you also experience the same problems? I mean, you didn't know that at the time we last spoke, I don't think so. I really should have.
What was that question again? What was that?
Did the residents after you also experience the same problems?
Previous tenants experienced similar activity in 2008 and 2009. A husband and wife with 3 kids. Rhonda, she's deceased now. She committed suicide. But I caught up with her in 2014 and spoke to her, and she spoke of similar activity. What's interesting also was when I caught up with her, she was living 500 miles from Bothell, a city called Yakima, Washington. And she said her son, whose bedroom was my office, still saw shadowy figures to this day. He still sees them. He saw them in the Bothell house, and he saw them where they currently lived. And at that time, I was seeing shadowy figures while living in the Bothell house. So I knew where she was coming from with that.
Okay. Julie asks, I'm going to come back to Darren's question in a minute. Julie asks, is the house built over a cemetery?
The house is not officially built over a cemetery. And I'll say why I use the word officially. The records for the state of Washington, for as cemeteries go, public cemeteries, Native American and modern day, only goes back to the mid-1900s. They didn't really keep records officially to the 1970s. And anything before the 1970s was just lost. Every now and then, a new area, a new land area, where they're about to erect residential homes, they will uncover Native Americans, and that brings construction to a halt, to a stop. So yeah. But if any of you were living here in Bothell, I could take you on a 4-minute, 5-minute drive to extinct or abandoned cemeteries of both frontiers and Native American. They're very easy to find. You can walk through the woods and through a trail and find yourself. Back in the 1800s, people buried their relatives in their backyard. There weren't cemeteries. People buried them on their property. You know, that was just common. And of course, Native American as well. So every now and then, you can find one just by taking a stroll through the woods of either or. And you'll see the frontiers that have a headstone. They'll have 1700, 1800 written on it. It's very old and decayed, but there's a body under there, you know, there's a name, and the Native Americans are very similar. But the state law now requires, if you stumble upon a Native American burial ground, there's a whole process now to call. But officially, there's nothing known in Bothell except the historical what I told you. Through the city of Bothell, we know 500 Native Americans. 2 tribes occupied the city in the mid-1800s. 500 lost their lives of smallpox and were buried in shallow graves.
I need to quickly pop downstairs for a moment, but I'll be back in a second. So I'm going to ask this question from Darren rather, about you and Tina. Are you and/or Tina currently experiencing any poltergeist issues where you currently reside, or generally in your work environment or on your travels since you both left the Bothell house? And the answer to this one is read Keith's second book. He's written 3, and that one deals with it in some length. But Keith, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I still periodically will experience a low-level targeting poltergeist activity, both home. I don't live in a Bothell home anymore. I've moved twice. I still experience what I call the disappearing and the reappearing of objects, the electronic issues, uh, the shadowy figures I still see, the what I call the, I know it's not a heartbeat, but it sounds like one, the heartbeat coming from my bed, the mattress indentations, the sheet tugging, the indentation of like an animal crawling in bed with you, but I have no pets. That I still experience. And when I travel, I will occasionally experience the electronic issues. The bed stuff goes no matter where I go. So that's local and when I travel. Tina, to my knowledge, does not. Tina moved out the house before I did. And when I ask her about any residual activity, she says no. I have to believe her. I know if she were, she would tell me. But and that's good. I don't want her to, but she does, to my knowledge, does not. But I do. I do. Yeah. I think I can see a few of these questions. Did the Poltergeist finally drive you and Tina apart? Yes, the Poltergeist finally drove us apart. Like I said, that divide and conquer, that wedge, um, that bridge too far mentally finally took its toll. Um, and the Poltergeist won. I mean, they have such an advantage. We sleep. You and I, we are finite on this planet for a limited amount of time. We have to re-energize what is called by sleep. Therefore, they don't. They really don't. And I tell people, you know, we often use the term poltergeist as if there's one. There were multiple poltergeists in our house, multitude of them. More, I mean, no less than 11. No less than 11 different entities. Some working individually, some working in unison. A majority working in unison, with different aspects of torment. You know, each one specializing in one different aspect of tormenting us.
We are
So yeah.
legion, for we are many. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's quite an interesting thing. Right, should we go back to the third part now and then come back? Because we got, I don't know if you answered Randy's question while I was downstairs in the loo.
Say that again. What's that?
I don't know if you answered Randy's question about a malevolent entity, but we'll come back to that one after the third part, shall we? Should we move on now?
Oh, I said, Randy, the description of your indicated intelligence, a malevolent entity that seems to intentionally still fear, confusion. One can avoid recognizing the fits with the Christian concept. Okay.
It's basically, it sounds like a demon, and if it walks like a demon and quacks like a demon, do we call it a demon?
Yeah, yeah, and I tell people, this case in its totality, there's a multitude of demonic activity. I know that word has been used over in the paranormal community, but that doesn't change the fact that we had so much activity. A lot of it lent itself to demonic activity. There's no way you can get around it. I personally believe poltergeist activity and demonic activity are two sides of the same coin. It's hard to have one without the other. Based on the definition alone, they seem to fit each other. But when you start, you know, insects, growls, scratches, flies, objects going through solid objects, things of that nature, yeah, you have to start, you know, thinking, okay, we're no longer on top of the spiritual food chain in our houses. There's something, because their capabilities, that's, yeah.
As the time's moving on, and we've been going for 2.5 hours now, I think we'd better start the third part, and then
we're almost there. Let me get to the tormenting.
There's no hurry. I said we could take as long as we needed tonight. Remember, so you take your time. There's no stress to go fast. I would prefer you have a chance to put the case properly rather than rush it.
Yes, I agree. Let's see here. Let's share the screen. Sure.
Excellent. We can see it now. Which just needs to expand out.
Yeah, I'm going to expand it. It wants to go back to the first slide. It doesn't really stop where I left off. Look, I can do this.
It's okay. It's a handy overview because I'm seeing the pictures yet again as they go through. It's good to be able to.
Yeah, and I'll send you the file. So yeah, tormenting. Tormenting, an example of tormenting, ladies and gentlemen, is, you know, what I've just showed already and what I'm about to show now is, you know, there became a time in the house where, you know, even my curiosity got the best of me. I'm installing motion detection cameras. I'm trying to catch the phenomena in real time. Of course, that's impossible. I don't know, and how could I know that I'm making matters worse? I'm digging a hole in myself that I can't get out of, but I don't know that. Poltergeists do not suffer fools. They do not suffer newbies. They do not care if you have no brush with the paranormal before. You're about to get a crash course into the worst experience in your life. That's why they're there. So I'm installing cameras and I'm thinking I'm getting footage. And when I go to retrieve the footage, the SD card has been removed from the adapter. I removed the SD card from my camera and it's gone. And I'm thinking, and by gone, I mean the camera was pointing in the direction of an object that went flying throughout the house. The camera was there, it was running at the time. I'm excited. I'm literally skipping to the camera to retrieve what I think is the Holy Grail. And when I get to the camera, the card is missing. Okay. Or if I get to the camera, the entire adapter is missing. A few hours later, sometime a day later, I go to get coffee. And like this picture, the adapter is sitting next to my coffee maker with the valuable information gone. The card itself, this is just the adapter. The SD card that was in it is missing. They're telling me, we got the data, we got the information. You'll never see that again. And I never will, I never have. I never resurfaced. Another frustration or tormenting is your key fob, my key fob. You know, we don't have car keys anymore. We have digital key fobs, right? So, and they're expensive. You know, the one I own now costs about $500. The one I own while living in the Bothell House costs about $400, and they would go missing. And I would have to get these items replaced. So as you see here, is the bill, $359 what I paid to get my car fob replaced. Knowing that they could take that one as easy as they took the previous one. I can only pray that they don't. To this day, I have 2 key fobs missing, so that's a value of about $700 right there. It's very aggravating because if you don't have your car keys, how can you get to the bank or how can you get to the car dealership to get your car fob replaced? You can't. And that goes back to the inconvenience of what they want you to experience. But that's just a level form of tormenting. Now, there were 4 types of tormenting inside the Bothell House, meaning multiple types. Tina had her own story to tell or experience with being tormented. An example of Tina being attacked in the home, where just Tina, I'm not even in the home, and the spirits attacked her, was one night she was in the home, she was in the kitchen, the lights in the house started flickering off and on. Tina turns around and goes to investigate, and she walks underneath a light, and the dome obliterates, explodes in her face. Another experience with her was the scratches. I'll show pictures of that. Mine, you pretty much know my individual tormenting examples of course, it was plenty. One was the poster catching fire in my office while I was taking a shower. The other tormenting involved me and Tina. The first Bible that caught fire, me and Tina were sleeping. We were sleeping. The house had been active that day before. The paranormal team had just left. And that night around 1:30, 1:34 a.m., we wake up to fire alarms blazing, and outside our door is a Bible on fire. And our friends, Tina's friends and my friends, have all been attacked two of my friends have been attacked in their own place of residence. They came to our house, didn't really, or they believed us, but they took our claims, they didn't take them seriously. They believed us, but they made mockery in a sense of, spirit, come out wherever you are. And I tell people, because I know now, if you say that in a home rumored to be infested with poltergeists, you run the risk of one of them following you home. And they did. And my friends now know what it's like to experience it because they have their own stories to tell. One friend of mine, son, this is true, woke her up in the middle of the night and told her, she told me, she said, "Mommy, they told him," she said, "you know, why are you awake and why are you here?" And he said, "They told me they're not finished with Keith's house." Now, this is her 6-year-old. He does not know what the goings on of the Bothell home. No parent would tell their child that. She didn't. But her son came to her with that information of they're not finished with Keith's home. And then she started having activity in her home as well. By activity, I mean objects being thrown and lights and going off and on. These are some of the scratches. It doesn't really become visible here, but Tina received for I think 2 to 3 days in a row consecutive scratches on her arm, both arms and legs and thighs. One morning she woke up in bed and there were scratches on her extremities. One day she was taking a shower and rushed out the shower with multiple scratches on her extremities. Very frantic, very unnerving, and that was crazy. This is the poster fire, spring 2014. I was in the shower. The fire department, I have this in document form. The fire department wrote down no root cause. They cannot, and how could there be a root cause to this? Posters don't catch on fire by themselves. And this is what the fire department wrote in their report, no root cause. Of course, this is an example of Keith and Tina being tormented, the Bible, like I said. Finding your kitchen like this in disarray multiple times. You can close all the cabinet doors, you can close everything, and turn your back, come back to the room 5 minutes later, and it's like this again. Bible goes missing in one room, it reappears downstairs on the kitchen counter in this condition. Once again, example of Keith and Tina being tormented. But as you can see, from a high level point of view, nothing out of the ordinary of other reported poltergeist cases, except the little nuances of, oh, it's a Bible, oh, it's the second Bible, oh, it's the third Bible. But we were not and I never really understood, we were not the only people to experience Bibles catching fire in the history of poltergeists. But we received negative reaction when we made our claims public. Friends are being attacked, like I said, elsewhere. I've already showed you Tina's friend, Kim's friend was attacked. My friend, who was an attorney, was attacked in 3 locations. There's a video on my YouTube that shows her attack. She filmed it on her cell phone of the attack taking place in her home in real time. Going back to what somebody said earlier, do I still experience things from time to time? Yes, I still experience activity as well as the women that I'm dating. I'm a single guy. I'm trying to, I got a date, right? But the women I've dated have had activity soon after meeting me. And I'm not meaning friendly activity. I mean malevolent activity in their own place of residence. Their cats behave weirdly. Their dogs are doing things that they've never done before. The cat or dog is peeing the floor. These are well-trained, disciplined animals, waking up, finding all kitchen cabinet doors open. This is not me. These are the women that I've dated who know, or some don't know, of my past experience. But upon finding out, well, I'm still single, so that lets you know how those turn out. Probably the best example of targeting an attack on Kina, other than my knee and me falling downstairs, is these 3 pictures you see. I mean, who has pictures nowadays, right? I mean, physical pictures. These pictures were in a photo album buried under boxes in my closet. buried on the box. I forgot I even had them. Okay, these pictures are old. These are pictures of my younger sister and brother graduating from college. So I even forgot I had these pictures. But remember what I told you earlier when you saw the upside down man and the scissor stab in the middle of the head? That wasn't the first time that's happened. So you see in these pictures, these are my family. The picture of the burnt face that you can't see is me. My face is burnt out of all three pictures. Just my face. Okay. And when we came home, there's the chair you see in the office again, facing the television. You see the office chair has been cut in half or torn in half. It's resting on a Bible page. Behind it on the wall, you see the upside down cross. You can see the remnants of the poster fire, letting you know this picture was taken, if not a few days, if not a few weeks after the poster caught fire, because that's the residue from the poster. But you see the scissors stabbed in the wall. Now, there's no upside down man, but there is a scissor. Now, that scissor was not there by itself. All three pictures of me was stabbed in the wall with that scissor. We removed it, Tina did, because we saw my face burnt out. And by then we were in communication with the Catholic Church. And this will scare anybody, right? I mean, you see your face burnt out on every picture, nobody else's, just yours. That will unnerve you. That let alone a scissor stab dead center. You can sort of see where the scissor pierced in the middle picture. This white right here is where the scissor was stabbed. Okay, we removed the pictures because we showed the priest, and Tina put the scissor back in the hole in the wall for me to take that photo. But these pictures were in the wall being held up by that scissor, and my head was where the scissor was penetrating. Okay, so that has to, I know what I felt when I saw that. I had to do two things: not show my girlfriend that I'm overly scared, because if I'm overly scared, she's overly scared, but I'm scared. And I don't know what to do. There's only one way to take that. Okay, there's only one way to take that. And what I showed earlier of being pushed down the stairs, no kneecap dislocated. Targeting torment of hiding my personal valuables, wallet, car keys, and what I thought the Poltergeist couldn't reach, but I later learned iron cast safe means nothing. This is the combination safe. Only I know the combination, not even the manufacturer, because I changed it. And I would put my belongings there. I had to. I mean, you wake up, ladies and gentlemen, and all your personal belongings, by that I mean your wallet, credit card, debit card, car keys are gone. I mean, how do you live if every day you're waking up, the things that help you live are taken and it's expensive to replace them? So I went out and bought a safe, and I keep my personal documents in here, but I also kept my car and wallet in here. And I would go to bed. Well, one morning I woke up, the safe is still closed, and I open it up and my items are gone. And they're still gone to this day. There's a driver's license of me somewhere out there in a hidden dimension. There's a wallet with my personal stuff in there somewhere out there. The Poltergeist still has these items, but a safe does not stop. Now, I want to be clear: is the Poltergeist hitting the keypad and typing my combination and retrieving the items? Of course not. The Poltergeist is not doing that at all. The Poltergeist, operating from a multiple of dimensions, is just simply getting the items. This four-wall cast iron safe does nothing. It does nothing. We understand, and this is theoretical physics talking, the Lisa Randos, Stephen Hawking's of the world. If we are to believe there are 11 dimensions or more in reality, then yeah, if you living or operating from anything above the fifth dimension, removing an object from a closed object is not impossible to do. Okay, so conclusion. So shot of the Bothell House. The middle window is the office. That's the room you saw in disarray with wall markings. Like I said, two-story home, single unit. And you can sort of see the close proximity of the houses in the area. With poltergeist infestations, we're normally dealing with children, adolescents in the environment. Usually affects families or individuals having some type of problem or trauma in the family, be it financial difficulty, family issues, living conditions, and environmental problems. Those types of issues. To be honest with you, we've not found any of those things here, which makes this an unusual case. Some of the phenomena taking place is certainly demonstrative of poltergeist infestation. Parapsychologist Steve Mera. The current belief, I believe, being championed through the community as a whole, I know there's just competing theories and competing beliefs, but the one that seems to get the most attention, and I say this based on the material that I've read, is there tends to be this belief that poltergeist infestations begin and end with children or adolescents, or a environment, or a family problem or trauma. I respectively disagree. Poltergeist, Bothell House, we had everything that you can attribute to a poltergeist case. Not all poltergeist cases are the same, of course, but not all poltergeist cases experience the same level of activity. I guarantee if you ask me, did this happen, I will be able to tell you, yes, it did. We had phantom footsteps. Not all poltergeist activity experienced that, but we did. We had rappings. Of course, rappings is a common occurrence in poltergeist infestations, especially early on. We had that. Loud bangs, stone throwing, apparitions, equipment malfunction, wall writing. Not all poltergeist activity experienced wall writings. Strange noises, of course, shadowy figures. Not all reports speak of shadowy figures, but we did. Rustling sounds. These are terms that are not overly familiar, but I can tell you we experienced them. The rustling sounds of leaves or paper rustling. I heard that. That noise accompanied, somebody was talking about apparitions earlier in the Q&A. The rustling sounds we heard always preceded an apparition sighting. The sound of rustling paper always preceded the sight of an apparition. If an apparition was a female apparition, the feeling of being watched, foul smell, putrid smell, the worst smell ever. 1 trillion septic tanks, that's what it smells like. It's just the worst smell imaginable. Scratches, water puddles. I've experienced the water puddle phenomena in both the Bothell home and my second place of residence after moving out the Bothell home. Spontaneous fires. Not all poltergeist cases experience spontaneous fires, thank God, but we did. Not all poltergeist cases experience, those that do experience spontaneous fires, very few have had the clothing catch fire while wearing it. You know, we all have a fear of fire, and naturally so, and we have because it's ingrained in us as a child. But let me tell you, when your clothing catches fire while you're wearing it, that's different than you responding to computer monitors on fire. You know, that's different than 3 Bibles catching fire. The clothing that I'm currently in is on fire. That means I'm in immediate danger. Speech, the ability for poltergeists to speak. We know of EVPs, AVPs, the multiple different class systems of Class A to Class B or E, or D or E, but there are also poltergeist cases of the poltergeist talking to the individual. We did not have that. There was never a conversation back and forth between me and the poltergeist. I'm glad there wasn't. I do know after reading, and I believe them, of where people have talked of the poltergeist talking to them. One of the most famous poltergeist cases in America is the Bell Witch Poltergeist. John Bell Sr. and his family, when the poltergeist talked to several members of the family. And I know there's plenty of examples of poltergeist cases in the UK or Europe for that matter, where the poltergeist, for reasons we have yet to understand, has developed the ability to speak and articulate verbally. That by default is definitely the extreme level of communication. Phantom heartbeats, of course, what I call phantom, others call disembodied heartbeats. We experience that. I still experience that. Flies, yes, others have talked about flies. We had that. There are other cases where other insects as well. Snails, slugs, wasps, locusts, grasshoppers, maggots, worms have appeared in people's homes, falling out of the thin air, the ceiling, being thrown. Yes. But we had flies. The misconception I feel in the paranormal community, aka parapsychology community, is just because activity is happening around a person or in a room when a person is located, does not mean that person is the center or the aka so-called agent. There's this theory of the agent, the word agent. You're the agent. Tina was often accused as being the agent. You know, just because the activity erupts around you, keep in mind, the poltergeist may want you to think that, because it sends you down a path to where you're never going to reach a conclusion. If I tell you how to get to the North Pole and you go south, how long is it going to take you to get to the North Pole? So I think, or advise, in my opinion, of us being careful, because this word agent, I believe, just like the word demonic, I think it's often overused, this word agent. A lot of teams came into our house. The first thing they want to do is look for the agent. They're looking for, they're asking Tina accusatory questions. Activity, majority of it, probably 75% compared to Tina, happened around me. Does that make me the agent? Well, if I'm the agent, then what does that say about Rhonda and her family, who had similar activity 5 years before we even moved into the house? What does it say if I'm 5,000 miles away and I'm being attacked in my hotel room and Tina's still being attacked at home? Who's the agent? But I often see the word agent being used. Case in point, mistakes researchers make. It's not necessarily in the forehead or in the skull or the brain of the individual, these activities. The activity is an independent entity who's in the environment, who's observing everybody. Paranormal research team, everybody that comes into the home is being observed. Some of you have had your equipment malfunction either on your way to the location or at the location or leaving the location or while you're reviewing the evidence. I know because I talked to a lot of you. The entity has followed you home. There were several teams who came to our house and all their equipment, I'm talking about the battery life, died as soon as they walked through the doorway. Some entities, or some paranormal teams, had their equipment disappear. They could have sworn up and down they brought this voice recorder or whatever device with them, and it's gone. They kept it in a duffel bag or a crate or something, and it's gone. Don Phillips, this was not made public to the world, but Don Phillips had a shoe, a boot, that he wore to the Bothell House. He wore it. This is the boot he wore to the Bothell House. And this boot, or the second pair, went missing. He would only learn by calling his wife back in the UK that the boot, one shoe, was in his closet. I saw him walk through my house with those boots on. His boot is now back in the UK. It beat him back. How about that? So I'll run through, Chris, from a high level because it's very technical, but I did want to touch on it, and we can have a continuation because I know there's been recent talk, and I think it's justifiably so, about, we talk about this phenomena, but we often don't talk about or call attention to why the phenomena. How are poltergeists able to do what it is they do? How do objects levitate, float, fly, zigzag, turn on a dime, do cartwheels, disappear, reappear? And one of the theories being entertained by several people, not just me, there's several predecessors before myself, but I'm glad we're having that conversation. I'm glad there's a new book called Contagion out, having that conversation, because I believe it's a conversation that needs to be had. And one of those conversations is sound waves. Sometimes sound waves at ultrasonic frequencies can be used to levitate objects. This is not me saying this, has been demonstrated in laboratories around the world by certain scientists who are not necessarily studying the paranormal, they're just studying new ways to advance technology, thus creating sound no human can hear. That's basically ultrasonic sound that the human can't hear. However, it's still sound, as recently demonstrated by the Asuka lab in China, I believe is where this construction or experiment was conducted. There's a link in my third book, several matter of fact, where engineers and laboratories throughout the world, independent of each other, are using both infrasound and ultrasonic sound to move heavy, small, medium, and large objects with sound waves. There are various ways of emitting the sound wave, from creating a wave underneath the object and reflecting it back to its source, of using a transparent tank to create a large acoustic field. Sound waves have been demonstrated in laboratories throughout the world to levitate water, large objects, and if done right, humans. If done right, sound waves have been done to lift humans. One of the things reported in poltergeist cases that don't get talked about a lot is the levitation of humans, the levitation of children, mainly boys and females have been levitated, men and women been levitated, dragged across the room. I'm glad that never happened to us, but I know it can happen after studying other poltergeist cases. People have been dragged out of their beds. People have been dragged in other rooms, dragged on the ceiling, dangling from the ceiling. I'm immediately reminded of an African-American family in Indiana. This happened about the same time the Bothell case was erupting. A family in Indiana was experiencing similar activity where the child, the daughter, was being levitated by an unknown source. Several witnesses, including law enforcement and the priest, I believe, who was at the scene, saw this child levitate. The older son was alleged thrown across the room. In other poltergeist cases in Yorkshire, Northern England, the investigators witnessed a marker pin appear out of nowhere a few centimeters below the ceiling in front of them. This pin flew across the shop, hugging the ceiling for about 3 minutes, then arched downwards, hitting a cardboard box. There are experimental video on YouTube as it relates to infrasound and ultrasound, where they are doing the exact same thing with objects in a laboratory. The description given here and elsewhere in the videos you see in my book are almost identical as far as behavior. Once again, symptoms of invisible sound waves. This is science. Science, like I said, is not necessarily trying to link this with the paranormal community, but they have demonstrated that infrasound basically has or can be responsible for what is called, what we describe as phantom footsteps, rappings, loud bangs, stone throwing, equipment malfunction, shadowy figures, rustling sounds, feeling of being watched, an uneasy feeling, water puddles, phantom heartbeats, abrupt mood swings. I can't tell you how many times me and Tina would have abrupt mood swings and not know the root cause. It's its own category, not waking up on the wrong side of the bed, as the cliche goes, but just having abrupt mood swings and not know what the root cause is. Is it invisible sound waves? Is the poltergeist tapping into the sound waves? Is the poltergeist a sound wave? When I show you a slide coming up, that should be a question some of us might want to study or go after. Is the poltergeist its own sound wave, its own frequency? All of us, science tells us, all of us exhibit a frequency. You might not necessarily know off the top of your head, but we all do. Every living object in this, or like I said, living, every object in the universe exhibits a frequency. How are objects traveling through walls? How are objects traveling through ceilings? The majority of poltergeist cases, mine included, the house occupants speak and know, but not often called attention to by the researcher, is the objects are going through solid objects. I can tell you Steve Mayer and Don Phillips saw a ball, a test thing, a ball that they brought go through our kitchen table, my kitchen table. They saw it, not me. My back was turned. They saw it. It went through the kitchen table. Me, I've seen objects fly through walls in my house, candles, glass candles, fly in the hallway. My cologne bottle that I keep in my bathroom by my kitchen sink was hurled at me. I mean, literally projectile. It traveled through a wall. Beer bottle traveled through a wall. If we look to science, we don't have to go to Ghost Adventures or the Travel Channel. We just have to look at science. We'll see all this theoretical possibility is waiting there for us. Classical mechanics says an object cannot go through a solid object, but that's classic mechanics. We've known for quite some time that there are also quantum mechanics where a solid object can. Quantum tunneling, which has been proven over and over by researchers, and just as recently, quantum mechanics has proven that macro, not micro, macro objects can go through solid barriers. A solid object in a quantum level can go through a barrier by simply changing from a solid to a wave. If it changes to a wave particle, it can go and defy the classical mechanics or the laws of classical mechanics, but it's not dealing with that law anymore. It's changed. Are the objects that are flying in people's homes changing? Is the cologne bottle, which is a solid object, we'll all agree, but the time that it came through the wall, did it change to a wave? We know, or there's talk of when people pick up objects after being thrown, that they are hot or warm to the touch. Some are scalding hot, some are warm, some are hot, some are cold. Now the objects that catch fire, of course, in the Bothell House, several objects caught fire. The most famous were the 3 Bibles, the 2 computer monitors, my poster, and the clothing that I was wearing. What people don't know or don't call attention to is the other poltergeist cases where there are talks of spontaneous fire. We talk about the latter, but we don't talk about the condition prior, or there's not enough analysis on the material or the condition of. If you review my 3 burnt Bibles, we can just see, you're not gonna see it from this slide, but they're in my book. You'll see that there are interesting burnt marks on all 3 books, cigar-shaped burnt marks. What stood out to me when I started reading other poltergeist cases where spontaneous fire occurred was the description given by both the researcher and the house occupant, but more importantly, by the first responders. See, back in the United States and probably in the UK, in the early days, when poltergeist activity erupted, there was no paranormal team to call. You called the fire department. You called the police. Most cases in the United States, going back, people called the police. The police who responded wrote in their notes that the material that they saw burnt or on fire had interesting cigar burnt marks that they could not explain. I, having reviewed my 3 Bibles again, saw similar burnt marks on 2 Bibles and similar burnt marks on the clothing that caught fire that I was wearing. I later learned that there's a terminology in the quantum physics world called black body and black body radiation. We all in our homes have a black body device. A hair dryer that dries your hair is eliminate, or how can I say, executes black body, exhibits, how about that? The invisible heat, the heat that you cannot see with the naked eye, but could if you had on infrared goggles, to where you could see an object like a hair dryer shooting red, infrared, in the infrared spectrum heat onto your hair or any other object to dry it. A kitchen oven range if you turn it on, the range itself looks like it's off until you touch it, until you see your pot boil. But if you were to wear infrared goggles, you would see that the range is definitely on. Don't touch it. Black body is in that sense is what I'm suggesting on how the objects in my home caught fire, only because there were times when the objects caught fire, they catch fire abruptly, once again, spontaneous. It's an instant. However, with black body, you can aim something at, say, a book, and as long as you're controlling what is called the ignition frequency, there's a thing called ignition frequency to where we all have, every object in the universe has it, to where there's a threshold of catch fire or don't catch fire. Once the ignition frequency, and every device has a different frequency, once that ignition frequency is reached, that object will spontaneously catch fire. Up until then, here's the kicker, up until that ignition frequency is reached, whatever heat is being generated is in the invisible spectrum. So it can go from looking cold, and I'll talk about the naked eye, to all of a sudden catching fire. Remember I said, what did I say? I said I put the fire out on my computer monitor. I turned around and poof, the fire was back. Okay? Once the ignition frequency is reached, it goes from micro, infrared, invisible spectrum to the macro to, now we got flames. But something is targeting that object and controlling the ignition frequency up until the time of ignition. The book Fahrenheit dealt with that very elegantly, of describing how books, what ignition frequency or what's the temperature for a book to catch fire. And I believe the author was able to deduce the temperature needed to make a book ignite on its own. But every object, human included, clothing included, has an ignition frequency. The poltergeist, for some way, somehow, is able to target and emit black body, home in, invisible heat. And that's why when you read poltergeist cases, others where they talk about fire, most house occupants speak of the fire happening in the room while they're present. They don't know why. They don't know why their clothing caught fire. They don't know why their bed or pillow caught fire, the wall, the drapes, the cupboard. Right now in third world countries, and I see this because I get emails sent to me by Google of strange reports of spontaneous fire. But in parts of the third world, there are reports of these spontaneous, inexplicable fire attacks where an object in the home catches fire and burns the house down or burns the hut down. The people are at their wits' end. The tribesmen are called, the priest, the church, whoever are called, and nobody knows why. The fires are just abruptly erupting everywhere. They've ruled out hoaxing, they've ruled out prank. They're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at it to solve the problem. And they can't solve the problem because you and I, we don't see in that spectrum. We don't see invisible heat. If we had infrared goggles glued to our eyes 24/7, we might see some remarkable things. And then lastly, dimensions. Where are these objects going? We talked about A-port, as-port. Some of you have experienced that. I've experienced that. Like I said, I've had objects disappear and reappear in the hallway. I've had books disappear and reappear. Poltergeist phenomena includes objects appearing in people's homes that they themselves don't own. Where do these items come from? A lot of the items that I can tell you that the kid toys that me and Tina experienced were dated kid toys. These are not kid toys that if you went to Toys R Us right now, you can buy a duplicate. These toys seem to be older, were older than the house itself. That's gonna sound weird, but the toys we're holding in our hands that's popping up everywhere in our home are older than the house itself. Okay, the jury, some of it, not all of it, but some of it is older than the house itself. The house was built in 2008. What we're holding in our hands is at least 20 years older. I'm talking about the kid toys in the jury. Books went missing, many of the Bibles. Previous tenants, mail, inexplicably appeared several times in our house, mainly in the kitchen drawer. These are letters and mail that, you know, have the address of people who lived in the Bothell House before us that are appearing in items that we belong, that belong to us, or that are appearing in the kitchen drawer that's occupied by our silverware. Okay. Kid toys, talked about that. Of course, coins disappeared or reappeared. Every coin, every dime that, and I know there's something about dimes because I read a lot of poltergeist cases, and for me, the most often talked about coin found is a dime. I don't know what that means, but the dimes that I found multiple times in different parts of the house all had the year 1969. All of them. But is there a world? Well, we know there's a world because science says there is. There's a dimension that runs parallel to ours that I have to believe is where these things reside and where these things are coming from, based on the fact that we found a lot of stuff that belonged to us, and like I said, a lot of it was from a different time period. And lastly, when we think about hidden dimensions, we don't need to think that a hidden dimension is somewhere in far away land. Theoretical physics tells us that hidden dimensions are 1 millimeter away. That's less than the size, that's half the size of a hair follicle. That's how close the dimension is to us, the hidden dimension. So if you pluck a hair outside, just pluck a hair right now, look at it, put it under whatever microscope, and you'll see these dimensions that scientists know are real. When you ask them, well, how far away is it? The question is not how far away it is, how close are they? It's less than 1 millimeter, which is half the length of a hair follicle. So when people talk about shadowy figures out the corner of their eye, or something touching me, something brushing me, scratching me, these beings I refer to as minions, I believe that's how close they are. That's how I'm able to hear the heartbeats and whatnot, is because they're that close. And that's it, Chris.
It helps if I remember to unmute myself. At this point, let's go over to the last set of questions. Thank you for what's been a very detailed and lengthy presentation. I think this is the longest we've ever done. So, thank you very much to Keith. I'm sure everyone's... some people are going to have to go, have had to go, so we're down. So let's go back up. And we had Randy's one, so... You've already answered Julie's. Keith, you mentioned you experienced apparitions in the house, and again, you've gone to some detail about this in the past. Can you describe the apparitions? Were they more solid and detailed than the shadow figures you experienced? So maybe you could just go run through the lady in white and the lady in grey there, or give a couple of examples.
Yes, so the apparition, I described this in There's Noses of the first apparition was what I refer to as the Gray Lady. And I know other poltergeist documented cases, interesting enough, refer to apparitions the same description, Gray Lady. It's interesting how that common, like I said, the similarities. But that's what I coined her, was the Gray Lady, and it's good reason why, because number one, she was 100% gray. She was not translucent or transparent. You know, me, prior to being indoctrinated to the paranormal, I had a belief that ghosts were flowing and translucent and visible and see-through and all that. But the gray lady I saw was full-bodied, that's the term, and 100% gray. And how that story happened was I was in my office, and this is 2012. This is a few months of us living in the Bothell House. I was typing on my computer upstairs, and I heard a click. By click, I mean a light switch. And when I turned toward the door, the light in my office went off. The light in my office went off, but the hall light was on. The hall light was on. And I turned toward the direction of the sound. And every light switch, at least the ones I've grown up with over time, they all sound the same. You turn the light off and on, they all sound the same. I look in the doorway and there's this woman standing there. And she's plain as day, standing there. And I look at her and she's all gray, because I thought it was Tina, meaning that I thought Tina was playing a practical joke on me. So I turned around and said, Tina, stop playing. But no, it's not Tina. And this woman, the look on her face, she had an interesting look on her face. She had, she was very conniving. She looked very, she was being sneaky, kind of conniving, sneaky, malicious, but tired. She was very tired. She was confused, especially when, and this is true, next to my room, immediately to the left, is the washroom, the laundry room, and the door is closed. This gray lady, she's trying to, what I say in my book, she's trying to go through the door. She's trying to go through the door, and she can't. She's fading in and out, but she's not negotiating the door. And finally, she just turns her back to me and darts down the hallway. She's like, she darts. I still don't know what I'm looking at. I'm more showing instinct than anything, because I get up out of my chair and give chase. I walk, I'm like, hey, Tina, stop, you know. But when I get to the hallway and turn the corner, she's gone. It's gone, obviously. And then I walk to my bedroom and to the bathroom, because Tina was taking a bath. And Tina sees my face, and Tina's like, well, you know, what's wrong with you? What's going on? And I said, I saw it. I saw it. She's like, well, you saw what? I said, I saw it. I said, what did you say? I said, I saw a woman. There was a woman outside my door, and she turned off the lights and took off running. And up until that day, that night, we had already had the levitating plant, plants thrown, loud bangs, footsteps, missing items, reappearing items. So for me, it was a moment where I could finally give a face to the phenomena that we were experiencing. I was able to mentally sort of corral the experience by saying, okay, forget the kid ghost or the kid cough ghost or whatever. Well, it's a woman, but what woman? What woman was that? What woman was that? And then fast forward 2 years later, when the activity is just crazy tremendous, I would see that same woman again, but now she's all white. So now I call her the white lady, gray lady, white lady. But this time the gray lady, I was in my office again, but and Tina was outside. Tina was outside cleaning her truck. And I heard this rustling sound, this rustling. It was going on a while, but I was ignoring it to find something in my brain said, Keith, you need to deal with that rustling. You need to deal with that. So I turned to the direction in my doorway of the rustling sound, and this white lady comes walking by the door. But she's holding something, but I can't tell what she's holding because she's all white. And she don't make eye contact with me like the gray lady. She just walks left to right, and she goes into the guest bedroom, which is to my right. And I get up and once again go to the bedroom that she went into, and she's not there. But those are the two. There will be 2 to 3 more gray lady sightings after that, but only one white lady sighting. And both gray lady and white lady were identical to each other. Now, I later learned, and I put this in my book, that once I met Rhonda, I mean, Rhonda's the previous sinner I talked about earlier. Rhonda, that's her name, Rhonda. Both Gray Lady and White Lady look exactly like Rhonda, who was very much alive at the time. And it took me 3 to 4 years to study and stumble. I stumbled upon it, the theory or concept of both living and crisis apparition, because there is a terminology in the paranormal lore and dictionary of both a living apparition and a crisis apparition, multiple stories on both, right? But multiple stories, you know. Guy is sleeping, there's a knock on his door, he opens it, his wife walks in. Hey, honey, what are you doing? She just walks in, she don't even talk to him. She goes to bed, he leaves her alone, she goes to bed, he wakes up in the morning, she's gone. He later learns, because he gets a knock on the door by the sheriff department saying, hey, your wife died in the car crash the night before. There's multiple similar stories of things like that, or premonitions, or doppelgangers, or whatever. But both Gray Lady and White Lady looked like Rhonda, who, when I saw the Gray Lady, it would be 2 years before I met Rhonda. But when I saw the White Lady, it would have been 3 months after or so that I met Rhonda. By mating, I mean online and through communication, because we never met physically, face to face, but both. And why did it transition from gray to white through the course of 2.5 years? I don't know. It's a good question. I'm pretty sure there's multiple answers and theories out there. But both look like Rhonda. And like I said, Rhonda, we know, eventually succeeded in committing suicide because she had attempted to commit suicide 3 to 4 times while living in the Bothell House. And all that information is in my second book, that whole chronological order of Rhonda's suicide, both attempts inside the Bothell House and her successful attempt after she moved out. But was the apparition of both, take your pick, mainly, especially the White Lady, was that a premonition? Was that a precursor? I believe somehow it was.
I think it's relatively little known outside of psychical research. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Say that again?
Can you hear me, Keith? Yeah.
I can hear you now, yes.
I think it's relatively little known outside of psychical research that in the census tradition of the Society for Psychical Researchers' work, they basically broke apparitions down into different types. Crisis apparitions, which are clearly apparitions appearing at the time of death or around a time of, you know, absolute survival crisis. They also had apparitions of the dead, but the largest category of identified phantasms or identified ghosts in the census of hallucinations is what they called phantasms of the living. And phantasms of living persons were actually the most common type of ghost, where the ghost was identified right the way through till the 1990s in studies. So I think when you see a ghost, if the parapsychological tradition is actually correct, then the odds are that it may be the apparition of a living, healthy person who's not even experiencing a crisis at that moment. But that is information which very few members of the public know. And I think this is one of the most interesting things, is a lot of what you experienced and what you've encountered are things that have occurred time and time again throughout history, but which are not known to people who are not subject experts. I mean, I recognise some of them from my favourite book on Poltergeist, which is Alan Gould and Tony Cornell's book Poltergeist. You've read that one, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah.
500 cases from across history, and we see many, many, many of those categories they identified reflected at Bothell. Now tonight we've got a fairly unique opportunity, if you don't mind me. Christopher Lawson is here, who I would describe as being an expert on poltergeist history. He's a historian of poltergeists. Christopher, would you be willing to say anything, or are you busy at the moment? I don't know if he can talk at the moment, so I'll just invite him, if he's free, to ask a couple of questions. Christopher, are you free to talk?
Oh. Not putting me on the spot at all.
No, you're just not at all. So, from what you've heard tonight, how does it compare with the history of the poltergeist phenomenon? You're an expert.
Well, I really love this presentation. I was just writing a note to thank Keith for the level of detail, which as you mentioned, CJ, it's kind of unprecedented in a way. I'm just going to pop my headphones in here. I went on a big long walk and I was listening to everything, and it was great because I walked about 12 kilometers or so. So thanks for that.
Detailed discussion. Yeah. So, Chris,
gosh,
you wrote your PhD on the history of the poltergeist. Is this in that tradition?
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, I mean, and I was just reflecting a little bit and writing a small note because I feel like I have so much to digest, and Keith and I started emailing just recently, and I just feel like there's so much more for us to discuss. But Keith, I really loved how you divided up ideas between trickery, communication, and torment. And I think those categories are really important to clearly understand the effects that had on you. And I was really glad you're so candid about how so often you felt like you're jumping through hoops when you're dealing with all these different phenomena, because I feel like experiencers in general, especially in prolonged cases like the one that you've experienced, they feel the same way, you know, and I think they would relate a great deal to all three of those categories. For example, Shirley Hitchings, I'm not sure if you've come across her name, Keith, but I mean, she had a 12-year-long poltergeist experience from the mid-1950s to the late 1960s. And recently, the BBC actually made a radio series dramatizing and interviewing people, which was really well done. And it captured those categories really well. You know, that's just one of those cases where you see a lot of the strange kinds of phenomena that you're talking about. The other thing that I loved in your presentation is the iceberg illustration and how you were really critically saying, you know, people pay attention to all this stuff that's, you know, kind of how poltergeists are defined, but then they ignore all the other weird stuff that's occurring. And, you know, I feel like you do, you know, you have to treat all these events as part of the greater ecology in a way. And we're talking a little bit about that yesterday here on the conference, about kind of this ecology of strange things. And even though they may seem dissonant from each other, they are, you know, part of the greater stream of things that are going on. So, I mean, the short answer to CJ's question is, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of historically resonant things that you're talking about. You know, the books you've published and the experiences you share are part of that history of the poltergeists that I've been looking at. And I mean, I'm a mere historian. I look at how people have experienced and how they try to find an explanation for what affects them. You know, I'm not a site investigator or paranormal researcher like those folks who you're talking about, but I've looked at paranormal researchers and how they interact. So those are a few of my comments. I look forward to continuing to correspond with you, Keith.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm glad you're. Thanks for coming. I'm glad you're here because you've seen these more than I. I'm just living my case, but I've read others. But you've read countless others. But I'm a big proponent and champion of, you know, one of my favorite quotes, and so much I love it. I put it in all three books. Was there's nothing new under the sun in regards to the phenomena that we reported and those that you've studied throughout history. And I mean, there's nuances, yeah, but when you bring it up to a high level, Chris, we know poltergeist activity starts off gradual. There's a crescendo. There can even be a lull. There's those that drag on. It seems like eternity. We know the tearing up of the home. I'm talking about for the family involved. You know, the toll that takes. Some cases are darker than others. Some are short-lived. But yeah, there's just so much that you connect the dots to, I believe, and see the similarities. So when I see somebody and I just bump into them by chance of this being a disavower, I'm like, I can't even if this never happened to me, and people ask it, even if this never happened to me and Tina, and you told me to do a report on poltergeist, let's say I had to did a thesis report or something on Poltergeist, my conclusion toward the end would be, wow, why is this not being talked about more? Because that's just how my brain works. What happened in 1350 or 836 AD and what happened in 1945 or 1967, you remove the date in the time period. It's all the same. And I'm like, who here would be like, I'm not talking, this is before the advent of internet, TV, phone, even reading newspaper, right? You find stories in every part of the world and it's just the same. I'm like, these people are not talking to each other. I mean, now, you can say that now, but this started way before the advent of technology. So now being seeing is believing, have lived it, I have to, represent and do my part in being detailed and documented. So yeah.
And those are great points, Keith. And that's a thing that I'm a proponent of as well. Looking at this phenomenon historically, as you're right. You remove the dates, you remove the places, and what you're left with are quite a diverse variety of manifestations, some of which are more common than others. And some people experience more variety like you have than others have. Some people will only get the rapping noises and that's all they ever experience.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I thought I had been at the term wrestling sound until I researched other poltergeist cases because I had to describe it in my own head. And I would go to the library and I said, Tina, it's wrestling. I heard that wrestling before the white lady and then wrestling like paper and leaves. And then I started Google searching and reading books and the same word they would use, wrestling, paper, leaves. I'm like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's so simple. Why wouldn't it be rustling sound? Why wouldn't it be the sounds of paper? And that's the description they gave in the 1800s and the 1600s. But I'm still hearing it sounds the same to me, So I was good to see that already on black and white print from other cases because it just reinforced what I've lived through. Like, oh yeah, rustling sound. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Or, oh, flies. Yeah, flies. And I would read how they say the flies behave. Hey, yeah, the flies in our house behave the same way. Yeah, okay. So I'm just not crazy imagining flies. They're describing the same thing, how the insects in their house behave, how the insects in our house behave. It's identical. So.
Okay, and just before we push on, I think we'd be remiss not to take the opportunity to introduce you to Randy. Randy, are you available? I don't know if Randy's available or not, but I'll ask him as he's here.
I'm available if you want me to be available.
Hi, Randy's in the United States. He's very much in the tradition of psychical research and the parapsychological tradition. He's an investigator and a researcher. And Randy's currently working with Lance, who comes from, who's an elder from a Native American tradition, and a number of other individuals, to create an American psychical research organization similar in scope to the Society for Psychical Research, ASSAP, or the Ghost Club. Is that a fair way to describe it, Randy?
That's more of Lance's
right
passion than mine. Theoretically, I would love to see that. I just don't see the practicality of us creating a new organization.
Sure. I mean, it'd be great to get the
out of the blue back without, academics and, like the SPR and ASSAP were created with the immediate involvement of scientists and academics. But I don't think anything that Lance and I could create would in any way be comparable. But I, as you know, CJ, I've been lamenting for a while that there is nothing in the U.S. comparable to the SPR or ASSAP, now that the ASPR is completely defunct. There's nothing here to be the voice of psychical research for field investigations, as opposed to what the Ryan Center and the PA does. There's nothing here for field research outside of the ghost adventures and ghost hunters and the TV pop culture nonsense. And I would like to see something develop. But I'm not sure if Lance and I are the people to actually generate that.
Hey, I can find people. If you think that one of the people I was going to hook you up with was Keith, because Keith is obviously passionate about the subject and is obviously very, very knowledgeable about the subject. And I just wondered if you had any questions for Keith, or if you'd actually spoken before, if you'd had any experience, if you'd looked at the case at all. So, Randy, do you have any cases for Keith?
Well, Keith and I have chatted on Facebook in the past. Keith kindly sent me a couple of artifacts from the Bothell Hell House, one in particular, which I'm greatly appreciative of. And I do intend to interview Keith more in depth on a couple of questions I have later on. Yeah. I am very intrigued by some of the parallels between Keith's experiences and observations, and what Darren Ritson has come across in his research, which is why I point out the Contagion book. Very few researchers in the field have made those connections, that there seems to be more to this than just the accepted parapsychological model of RSPK. It seems more complicated than that in many cases. When you have phenomena that moves from location A to location B, but the focus or the suspected agent has never been to location B. That's something more than RSPK going on. And Keith has definitely observed that, as have Darren, and as have I. And I've experienced that in cases I've worked. So Keith is doing some very, very important work based on important observations that a lot of other researchers, just have not, made those observations, or if they have, they've not written about them.
And one of the problems here, I think, is that hauntings have traditionally been according to parapsychologists, been divided between person-centered hauntings and place-centered hauntings. And it's only recently that TikTok has had the object hauntings like Annabelle, etc. have come in. But the notion of contamination is interesting because we find it in one of the most famous cases in the 1970s in Britain, the Hexham heads. Whether they were real heads or not, as they were passed around, the phenomena moved and followed the heads. And then you had cases, Jim Schnabel wrote a book called Rounded Circles about how some people who went to crop circles, even crop circles that were possibly faked, would then return home and paranormal activity would follow them around their houses. And if they took soil samples from some of the crop circles, they took them home and then they would have outbreaks of paranormal phenomena. And that is something that the ufological community have talked about for a long time. I think it manifests in the legend of the Men in Black. You experience something, but it doesn't leave you alone. It follows you wherever you go and it moves with you. And whether that's somewhere between the place-centered and the person-centered or the object-centered, I don't know. But it's an interesting thing we need to look at. Right, Keith, I'm going to shut up talking in a moment. Are you still here, Keith?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, so Darren Ritson, I tried to get him to come along tonight. He wasn't able to make it. I think he's unwell. But I've got a copy of his book, and I'm going to try and send it to you so you can see it, or I'll ask him if he'll send you one. It's not out till next year, I don't think, or at least later this year. But he investigated the South Shields poltergeist, a very major case in the UK. And he deals with his experiences and the conclusions he drew from that in the book. And I think you'll find it very interesting reading. He's going to be doing a webinar for us in a couple of weeks' time. I think it's November he's doing. Just around about Halloween, the week before or after. So if you're free then, if you'd like to come along and meet him and maybe do some more discussion then, that would be interesting. The notion that the poltergeist is not related to RSPC, to recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, RSPK. Back in the 1989-1990, my friend Axel Johnston invented what we called Axel's Law. And Axel's Law was that the reason when we looked at cases, at families, where there were poltergeists that we were investigating together, he said, the reason, Chris, that every time you find family dysfunction or unusual levels of stress or sexual tension, is because those things exist in almost every normal family. The reason why you're encountering large numbers of cases that include children is because the people of an age to phone us up and get us to go out to their house and are scared are often people with children, and young single people are often just saying, I've had enough of this, I'm moving out, and they're moving to a different flat and putting it down the same way you would do termites or mold on the walls. You know, they chose to move. There are some people, however, who persist because they won't give in to the phenomena, and they'll keep fighting it and they'll resist, and they tended to experience the more dramatic phenomena. The longer you stayed and the more you resisted, the more attention you paid to it, the more investigation, the greater it escalated. But Axel's law that he put forward in 1990, and I like to quote in my books, is that the poltergeist is not an evidence of stress, family tension, sexual issues, or any of those things at all. They are simply investigated. They are simply associated with poltergeists because very human psychologists look in detail at a family and then decide, well, there you go, that's a potential explanation. And Axel argued his case, as he summarised it in a paper that was never published by the Society for Psychical Researches. The connection is true, but spurious. It's a case of correlation, not connection. The hypothesis that that family stress and disorders and human things wrong with human beings causes the poltergeist has one flaw. It's bollocks. Which might be why it was never published.
Oh, can I come in here, Chris?
Yeah, go for it, Kieran.
Thanks. In my particular case, and Keith and I have corresponded via email some time ago because we were introduced by Richard Sugg. But in my particular case, we, myself and my family, my mother and my sister, and another family, and the link person between the two families, we all went on a haunted holiday. We had a lot of paranormal activity. Now, paranormal activity occurs in my home. Paranormal activity occurs when I go to boarding school immediately after the haunted holiday. And paranormal activity occurs in the home of the other family. So, me and the girl from the other family were too young in that sense for this sort of puberty type theory for a start. Secondly, 3 locations, 2 very sensitive people, psychically sensitive people. So how many agents have we got? So we might have 3 agents, for example. Then there were 3 or 4 different entities. Unless you want to get very complicated with this and sort of say one person was an agent for this and that entity, whereas another person was an agent for a different entity, I can't see how the theory could possibly work. And even if you went down those lines, then you face another problem, which is the only person that has really attempted to define who the entities were and so on and so forth was me, simply because I faced the bigger problem and I was not in a position to kind of get away from the problem. And therefore, there was only one option, and that was to sort that out. But the major point that I'm trying to make is that I think that Chris and his friend are absolutely right. When you start looking at dysfunctional families, then, you know, who knows a family that isn't dysfunctional? It's a question of degree rather than kind. And when I went to that boarding school, that was a boarding school for maladjusted boys. We all came from dysfunctional families, but there was only one poltergeist boy, me. So there you go. That's really what I wanted to say. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. And in fact,
you know, when you look at the issues of stress being involved in a poltergeist case and thinking, well, the stress is somehow helping to generate that. Well, of course, there's going to be stress in a poltergeist case. If you're Keith or anybody else who experiences that, that's going to generate stress and fear. So the question is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is the stress and fear, stress generating this, or is stress just a natural symptom of what you're experiencing in a poltergeist case? And I don't think we can rule out RSPK. I mean, we can't, ignore the work of, Bill Roll and others. There have been so many cases identified where specific stress factors, psychological factors, and in some people, neurological factors have been identified as signatures. So we do have to address those issues. But again, the question is, do those factors generate the phenomena, or do they attract or facilitate the phenomena from an external source? That's the eternal question.
The problem with Bill Roll and others' ideas is I read Massimi and Roll, and I've seen poltergeist phenomena associated with everything from adolescent women, definitely not borne out by the stats if you look at Gould and Cornell, to masochistic behavior, masochistic personality traits, through to stifled creativity, through to epilepsy. You know, the number of possible symptoms. If this was a syndrome, I'd be turning around and saying, we need to do a cluster analysis here because, doctor, this is not one disease. It's like long COVID. What we're seeing is we're seeing clusters of symptoms, and they might well have different underlying etiologies. One of the most interesting poltergeist cases, says Christopher Lawson, is they don't have evident tensions such as Matthew Manning. My sister's old next door neighbour, actually, in Northgate Street in Bury St Edmunds, Matthew Manning. So there you go. I know him slightly, but only to chat to. Anyway, let's move on. Keith, let's come back to you, because you've heard loads of people talking about your case and discussing poltergeist, and you're no doubt annoyed and thinking, well, what the hell do they know about this matter? Because, you know, I lived with one, and listening to experts pontificating probably gives you the desire to make people go away. So come on, what do you have to say? What do you think of these conversations from your perspective?
No, I look at knowledge and information as a stepping stone, meaning I respect and understand the works of the parapsychology community, the predecessors, the Rolls, the Ryan Institute, the PA, and I understand, you know, these things have to have an origin. You have to have an origin of study. You have to have a theory to start from, okay? Doesn't necessarily mean the theory has to be correct. It might have been correct for that time, meaning you only have the data of that day. We have so much data now that I feel the time is right to maybe reevaluate the concept of poltergeist. And like I said, with the iceberg picture of, you know, RSPK is not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. But let's put some more attention and question on the other possibilities and see where they take us. See, back when RSPK was first introduced and telekinesis and all that was introduced, we did not know what we know now. We did not have the technology and the tools that we have now. There was no internet, there was no smart devices, there was no mobile devices, there was no such thing as 24-hour home monitoring. There was none of that. So we know a lot now that they did not have back then. And I believe if these gentlemen were alive today, they might update their theories. Albert Einstein was wrong plenty of times, but he was right plenty of times too. Stephen Hawking was wrong plenty of times, but he was right plenty of times too. We have to look at the data as it comes available. The Bothell House is not going to be the last poltergeist case ever. However, it does show some events that could put some theories to bed, in my opinion, and reintroduce some new ones. Because when I go back to look at other cases, I see what the researcher has left or chose not to talk about. Meaning, they go into a house, they see an adolescent girl, she's upset. Why wouldn't she be? There's a poltergeist there. And I could see how the investigation seems to channel around her. And you got to be real guarded about bias and unconscious bias of, are you going into an environment looking for pillars to support your theory, or are you going in there to find the truth? And I found out through research, and a lot of people go in looking for, especially when they came into our house, they were looking more, they were trying to support their theory, the ability to be right. Aha, right, I solved it. No, I was like, no, you didn't solve anything. So I share my information and my stories because I think they have value, and maybe go backwards in time and look at some of these stories, open up some closed cases and be like, aha, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's different. That's because we have so much new stuff now that we didn't have 30, 40, 50 years ago. And 100 years ago from now, somebody's going to have stuff, we'll be gone and they'll be combing over our stuff and they'll be like, oh my God, this guy's, what is he talking about? So we can all do our part. And but I look at this as a stepping stone. And that's why I used the analogy earlier of breadcrumbs, because the poltergeists in our house were good at throwing out breadcrumbs. They want to give you pieces of the pie, but they don't want to give you the whole apple pie. Going back to the wall writings, just tell us what you want, we'll give you what you want, and leave us alone. Well, they don't do that, obviously, but they give you breadcrumbs, and so they're studying us and going back. And I believe this, going back to their home base with information about us and reevaluating because they find us as interesting. But no, it's a good discussion, good topic to have. The brick wall that me and Tina were hitting when we were reaching out for help, which was played a role in our relationship, was they would ask me, "What do you think it's Tina?" I'm like, "Why is Tina even considered a suspect?"
Yeah.
Well, is she having mood swings? Is she on her menstrual? Is she, and I'm like, where are you getting this stuff from? Where
by the sound of it.
Yeah. And then I realized, oh, you're getting it from, okay. But Tina doesn't deserve that, or nor does Tina Reach or Boris. They don't deserve those,
I wrote
accusations unless you got substantial proof. But no, I just think it's a steps and stone, and we can all do our part. So, yeah.
Okay, as I'm hosting, I'll go for the last word, I guess, here, and then come back to Keith with recurring. My academic background was I was a religious studies lecturer who then worked in a history department, who then worked in a cultural studies department. And my personal interest in investigating poltergeists has been trying to understand the way in which parapsychologists have understood poltergeists from 1882 through to the present day, because I see shifts in our general culture, and that's why I was so excited when I found Christopher Lawson's work, because I concentrate more on the Victorian and the origins of the Society for Psychical Research, and he concentrates much more on the kind of post-war era, post First World War through to the Second World War through to the modern era. But yeah, so that was basically what I got into, and so I understand things in this really dull academic way, by which I tend to think that all poltergeist theories are basically just bollocks that we're trying out. And one of the things I found about the night hag, the idea of sleep paralysis, is the more you look at it, the more you find it's just a placeholder. For example, there's loads of different explanations that scientists have put forward for how sleep paralysis works in terms of physiology. I'm not saying it's supernatural. I think they're probably right, but they don't agree on a mechanism. And again, on the near-death experience, there's loads of different books about the near-death experience, but they all, when you look at the neurology of them, I took a model of the brain and I lit up each different section of the brain which was mentioned, and by the end it was glowing like a Christmas tree, because they've invoked almost every separate part of the brain in trying to create a mechanistic reductionist model that explains the experience. So I'm wary of that with the poltergeist. There are so many different things about it, but there are three main things that I've noticed over the years where I think there might be some way forward. A.R.G. Owen, who looked at the Southie, Virginia what's-her-name case up in Southie, Virginia Campbell, wasn't it, in Scotland, he subsequently wrote, when he was a member of the Toronto Society for Psychical Research, a book that I'm never quite sure what to make of. I've got the paperback. What's it called? The Philip Experiment, the Toronto Experiment, the Philip Experiment. It's something like that.
Conjuring Up
Philip. Yeah. And in the back of that, there's an appendix in which he puts forward a theory about sound recordings that was actually reinvented, apparently independently, by Barry Colvin about 30 years later. And I'm fairly sure, because Colvin doesn't cite it, that he was not aware that exactly the same thing is put forward in Appendix B of Conjuring Up Philip. Conjuring Up Philip's hard to get, it's out of print, etc. Sorry, I have cats charging past me now. So yeah, that's one thing that I think Keith would find very interesting. I can see if I can get a picture of that and send it to him. The second thing, because I mean that's something that he could test because he's got the recordings, and the recordings are available because Keith's made absolutely all of the data available on the website. And to be honest, we can't ask for more. I mean, it's like someone who caught Ebola, got better, fixed themselves with their own medicine, and then has then made the whole data available to the entire medical community, and we're not bothering to look at it because, you know, we're too busy struggling to cope with just keeping ASSAP running. We need people to engage with that data, and I've been saying that now since I did the first review about 4 years ago. And
yeah, the data is there.
The data's there. Yeah. So that's the first thing. We could look at it from that. Secondly, Bill Roll put forward a very, very specific hypothesis about objects moving at tangents to the agent therefore being identifiable, and the distance or travelled divided by weight being, you know, you could place it on the energy decay curve. Marmalade, stop doing whatever wicked thing you're trying to do. So yeah, I mean, again, if we have the data about how objects move, we are able to... Oh, come and say hi to Keith then. There you go. Right. We have information that we could use to either substantiate or negate Bill Roll's hypothesis. And there's one other paper, and I've completely forgotten what it is now, and I've talked enough nonsense tonight, so I'm going to shut up. But I think there are 3 papers which actually put forward testable, verifiable hypotheses. And assuming, obviously, as I do, because I don't see any reason, I always assume... I know nowadays it's unfashionable to believe the victim. And in certain circumstances, I've had plenty of friends who've been accused of things they haven't done. And I'm sure many of you have experienced prejudice of various types in your life and have been accused by people of things you haven't done, or known people who have. But in the case of people who've experienced poltergeists, my gut feeling is that if we don't take them seriously, we're doing a disservice to parapsychology, we're doing a disservice to them, and we're pretty shitty human beings. So let's take the data, let's engage with it, and if anyone's interested in doing so, please get in touch with Keith and read the 3 books he's written. And until we actually see some progress, and Darren and Keith get together and other people do, we probably won't see any process. But for once in my life, for the first time in 30 odd years of investigating this phenomena, I've got a feeling that we're coming close to an understanding. So I'm going to guess that by 2025 we might have some testable, useful models, and what we might be up against will be more of a war against whatever the phenomena is than it is or an attempt to deal with the phenomena on a case-by-case basis. But whatever it is, it'll be different to anything we expected. Who knows? But here's to the future. Keith, last word.
Last word is thank you. This is good. Like I said, you can never talk about this stuff enough. There's just so much material. It's a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So therefore, thanks everyone for asking questions. If you got more, some of you I've already begun the communication with, so I'm pretty sure we'll continue those. Thanks, Christopher, for dialing in. I was glad to see you here. Robert, thank you. CJ, thank you. We'll maintain communication, but like you said, if there's anybody out there that wants some data, let me know, reach out to me. I'll send it to you. The 3 books, and CJ knows this, I make these books crazy inexpensive online. Yeah. Crazy inexpensive online, because I want people to get them. This is not to fatten my pockets, but once you read, I've had people call me after reading my books, and they're like, "Oh, this book should be charged 10 times as much."
Yeah,
but
$20.
I don't care.
Instead of 50.
I want it in people's arms and hands and Kindles and e-readers, because I put the links in there. You know, you're never going to find a poltergeist book from a house experiencer where if I tell you this EVP said something, I'm not just telling you. I provided the link for you to hear it for yourself. If I said this object got thrown, or this loud bang, or voices, or white lady apparition, I'm not just saying that. I provided the link so you can go view it yourself. So it's very interactive, and there's tons of references. So definitely check it out, and then reach out to me before, during, or after, and I answer any question. I'm not all knowledgeable. I'll tell you if I don't know. I've been very consistent. I won't change the story. I won't alter it. I won't filter it. I won't soften it, because I got to tell you how it happened, how we saw it, because that's the truth. And so, yeah, thank you. I'd love to do more of these. So, yeah, in October, I'd love to just sit in and listen and be a part of that. And of course, it comes my way, good. If it doesn't, fine. I just want to be in the midst of it to listen, because I learn stuff every day about the Bothell House. And believe it or not, some of it, see, that comes from people online who've read the material and reviewed the evidence, and they come back with me like, hey, did you hear that voice is talking right underneath yours? And then they've condensed it to where I can hear it, and then I hear it, and I go find the mother file, the original file, and it's already been there. It's always been there for years. So they're not adding it in. They're not trying to inject themselves into my case. But the more eyes and ears, this is going to shock a lot of people. 20% of the evidence of the Bothell House is online. 20%. 80% of it is still on my hard drive, yet to be listened to or heard of. Wow. And so there's a lot of wows we haven't even crossed yet. A lot of wow country that we haven't even opened up yet. And I backed it up for fear of it being lost or stolen. So anybody out there who got some time, just let me know.
And if anybody else would like to interview Keith or get in touch with him, or would like to arrange for him to appear on a podcast or do anything else, I mean, Keith is not in this for the money, because I keep encouraging him to charge more for his books, and he doesn't for the reason he gave. But the amount of work he's put into this while holding down a professional career is astonishing. So many thanks to Keith, and many thanks to you all. This has been the last speaker at this year's ASSAP conference. We started off yesterday morning with people talking about with Mark Davey and Andy Wilson, telling us about the investigative procedures and our plans for the future. I've had to, owing to the fact whenever I drink and eat I'm choking at the moment, I've got some medical issues that need investigation, so I've had to cut short the program to just 1.5 days. But I hope you've managed to enjoy the online conference that, as you know, we made available for free to all the members, and indeed to actually anyone who was interested. And I hope to see you again in December, when the plan is currently to do an afternoon short series of talks, and then have an open panel discussion between Poltergeist authors. So that will be our next mini-con, will be on sometime in December, and I need to talk to the Poltergeist experts, many of whom are here tonight, so that we can actually arrange that. And I also need to learn to shut up and let people get some sleep. So on that note, many thanks to Kith Linder, many thanks to Christopher, Randy, everybody else who spoke tonight, Kieran, and everybody else who spoke during the weekend. And thank you on behalf of ASSAP. And I'll see you. Oh, and if I'm still chair by the 1st of November, I'll see you all again soon. This week's webinar will be the usual time, 7 PM, and is Dr. Kel Cooper, who's talking about phone calls from the dead. And Keith, you probably enjoy that. You might want to try and catch the recording or come and join us live if you can. All right, have a good night, guys. And thanks once again to Keith for a fantastic 4-hour long discussion of the Bothell case. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.